Welcome to the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC 301 Pantoja versus Erceg. I'm your host, Ben Duffy of Sherdog.com. With me, as always, is Keith Schillen, the executive producer of the Sherdog Radio Network. Keith, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. Before we get into this card, I want to apologize for not having a live recap show. Ben was on vacation. I actually was still traveling and stuff, so it was going to be really hectic. I almost tried to do a solo show, but then I missed like the first 4 or 5 fights, so I wasn't going to be able to, wing it. So apologize for all those who listen to that and look forward to that. But, man, nothing will build up my spirits more than getting right back into it, getting breaking down a 14-fight UFC fight night card from the Apex. I mean, this is fantastic, right?
Let the record show that I am still technically on vacation. I got suitcases sitting right there, but I wasn't going to miss this one if I was physically capable of being in front of a microphone. And don't let Keith fool you. This one is not at the Apex. This is, of course, at the building now called Pharmacy Arena in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. This is the UFC's first trip to Brazil this year. It's a big one. It's a pay-per-view. Yeah.
Let's change it. It's a pay-per-view. It's a big one. Yeah.
Well, it's big in quantity. It's got 14 fights.
Yes, that's true.
It's obviously, this does not hold a candle to UFC 300, but there's a certain amount of the same vibe to it where maybe the very, very top of the top fights don't have the shine that the UFC would have liked it to have. But as you go down the card, there's good stuff throughout. Like, this is not going to go down as one of the top 3 or 4 UFC events of the year. It's not going to be in the running for event of the year unless incredible crazy shit happens, but I don't think it's going to go down as one of the worst ones either. Like, I'm quietly kind of excited for this one.
Yeah, it's all like hindsight's 2020. It's like when Dana White did his little hit piece on media and a couple of bloggers and everything, and he, what do these guys know? They said that UFC 300 was going to suck. Like, I don't know if anybody said the card itself, the action was going to suck. I think they just said like, hey, you said we were going to get this all-time epic main event, and we didn't get this all-time epic. Now the card absolutely delivered. We weren't one of those bashing the card. We were like, we were excited. We dressed up. We said it's the biggest card in history. That said, I could go to the local Friday night football game, and I might show up and have a hell of a football game. Final score, touchdown on the last play, something like that. That doesn't mean the next time I go to a football game, you can charge the $70, $80 for me to get in. It's still $3 to get in. So, like, you can't sell how great it was afterwards. Because flip that. When we pay $70, $80 for a pay-per-view and it sucks, do you reimburse us? Do you say, oh, well, it didn't live up to $70, so here's your money back?
No, but Dana does go ahead and turn on his webcam and record a video apologizing to all the bloggers that criticized it, because he's all about the balanced treatment. Obviously not. But no,
I'm going to disagree. I'm not. There's a couple fights I like, but I mean, throw do something with it. I mean, it's a pay-per-view, and I understand. Like, I understand the logistics. It's easy for me to say, "Oh man, load up. It's a pay-per-view." I understand they contractually obligated to get so many pay-per-views, and they wanted to get a title fight, and it doesn't have the biggest names. And then when you load up 300, 298, 299, like you loaded up cards before it, you got International Fight Week right around the corner. I understand that something had to take a hit, but when you have the light heavyweight champion of the world willing to fight at heavyweight and he wants to be in the card, and I understand it's easy for me to say, like, I don't know the budget, I don't know things like this. Like, I get it. But dude,
I think they may have found a way to do it still, except that it turned out, like, in his post-fight physical, that he had a broken toe.
So who cares? There's no time.
I will say this.
Then just toss Bo Nickel on the card.
Ding, ding, ding. There you go. At heavyweight, Bo would fight at heavyweight.
There you go.
I think Bo could, at the very least, take down 90% of UFC heavyweights. Anyway, having said what we said about the card so far, I will say this: when the UFC travels outside of the United States, I usually will give a quick rundown on how good a job they did booking appropriate to the audience that they're going to be performing in front of. It doesn't get much better than this. There are 14 fights on this card. Every single one is a Brazilian against a non-Brazilian. And in 11 of them, the Brazilian is the favorite. So there's the audience should be entertained and should have plenty to cheer about, barring some truly unforeseen outcomes. But yeah, like at the very least, when the UFC goes to France, we're always counting off, okay, how many fighters are from France? If you don't have enough French fighters to get one in every single fight, how many are at least from like Western or Central Europe?
Yeah.
Or you didn't do something stupid and have two. Yeah, you didn't do something stupid like have two French guys fight each other. But
yeah,
this one, 100% A+. 14 fights, 14 Brazilians against non-Brazilians.
You said 11 are favored. 11 are favored.
Yep.
And the judges will make sure the other 3 become favored.
We will see what happens. You know what? I'm broadcasting from Texas. I got to be careful about throwing stones at the judging and reffing in other places. But okay, so it sounds like I'm a little higher on this card than you are. Outside of the headliner, give me one fight on the main card and one fight on the undercard that you're most excited for.
Okay, outside of the headliner, let me see the main card. Michelle Pajeda is always fun. I'll go with Michelle Pajeda versus Io Pretoria. The prelims... Actually, some of the prelims fights are better than the main card. I'm going to go either Jack Shaw and Joanderson Brito. That's a really fun matchup. Or Elves Brener versus... I have no idea how to say this guy's name. Orolbai.
Yeah, Orolbai is perfect. There you go.
Orolbai. I'll go with one of them.
I'm with you on those. I might slip in the Drakkar Klose fight as an undercard fight that I'm excited for. We'll get to it when we get to it, but I need to own up to having kind of dismissed and underestimated Drakkar Klose for a long time now. But again, that's a couple fights in. Any other general thoughts on this card before we dive into the prelims? Yeah,
you're higher in this card. Like I'd give it a D, man. Great on paper. This was a fight night. It would have a very good score, but for a pay-per-view, I gotta go. I mean, you call this a big card. Dude, you know what's big? Can I do a quick story time with Keith? I know we don't do story time with Keith for pay-per-views. I try not to. And I think this one's a pretty good one. You know what's big? King Prussia Mall is big. I'll talk about that in a second. I was in the Valley Forge King Prussia or Prussia. I apologize if I'm saying it wrong.
King of Prussia, yeah.
King of Prussia. Okay, say that. I was there for a week. I didn't even get the name of the city right. King of Prussia City. So it goes back to my rant last week. It still goes back to my wife not packing for me. She didn't pack me sneakers, and I got there, and I'm like, oh shit, I don't have sneakers. I had cutting grass sneakers on that I wore that day, and I forgot. And it's like you could wear sneakers, but you should be somewhat presentable. So I'm watching my daughter's. It was Monday night. I'm watching my daughter's softball game on my phone. Like some people there, there's a little app you can watch things. And it gets to the bottom lineup. I'm like, all right, let me go run over to this mall. My hotel was directly across the street from this mall. I was right where Macy's was. I'm like, hey, I'll go across the street, go to the mall. I'll grab that. I'll buy some sneakers. I'll be back. I wouldn't even miss her at bat or anything like that. So I just look real quick, King of Prussia Mall, sneakers, what store. So I know get rid of Dick's Sporting Goods. Now I have no idea how big this mall is. To where I am, it's positioned. I just see Macy's, and it was a little parking garage, way smaller than Private Place Mall parking garage. That was just the Macy's parking garage, but I didn't realize that. So I just pull in real quick. Mind you, I'm kind of still watching the softball. So I'm not walking in. I'm watching the softball. I'm walking, and I can't find Dick's Sporting Goods. I'm looking around, walking, and I'm in there forever. And but I'm still not paying attention. I'm still watching the softball. And now it's got to the next inning, and I'm kind of walking and watching the mall, and I'm like, man, this is a nice place. It's next thing I know, I'm in there's a Gucci store and Ralph Lauren and freaking Rolex.
I love this so much.
Okay, so
I want to jump in with the spoiler for the listeners.
Oh no, you're not gonna know the spoiler. It gets way better.
Oh, okay.
It gets all right. Long story short, I find Dick's Sporting Goods. Okay, but I gotta back up. I've been walking around, but again, I'm not really paying attention, so I realize maybe I'm missing it. I have no idea how big the mall is. Finally, I go. I feel like I've been walking forever and not finding this, and I go, how big is King Prussia Mall? Third biggest one in America.
Yep.
Biggest one in Pennsylvania, biggest one in the East Coast. Or East, not East Coast, but Eastern Hemisphere, whatever the hell you call it. Okay. So now I'm like, oh shit. I'm tired. I'm kind of cranky. I want to eat. So I'm walking. I'm like, all right, I'm not a mall person. That's just not me. I'm not a freaking 14-year-old girl. So I'm walking and like in the middle aisle, there's like an Asian guy and he's got like a massage bed, like a kiosk. Yeah. So I walk, I lock eyes with this guy and I'm walking towards him. And the guy looks at me and he goes, and I see him and he goes, sir, do you want a massage? And I can tell he doesn't really speak much. He's like, sir, you want a massage? And I go, and he's like a 60-year-old Asian dude. And I'm like, no, can you tell me where Dick's Sporting Goods is? He goes, no Dick's. And I'm like, okay, like, all right, 60-year-old guy doesn't know where Dick's Sporting Goods is. Third biggest mall in America. I don't think anything. I start walking 3 or 4. So then all of a sudden it hits me. I go, holy shit, the guy thought I was asking him to massage my dick in the middle of the mall. And I'm like, holy shit. Now, of course, I feel like the freaking creep. Mind you, I'm at a training about sexual assault, like the whole training for illegal investigation. So I turn back around. I go, I got to tell this guy, I wasn't asking him to massage my dick. I want to know what Dick's Sporting Goods is. Oh, it gets worse. I go back. And I'm like, no. Hey, Dick's Sporting Goods. He goes again, no Dick's. And I'm like, no, like baseball, basketball, football, like sporting goods, Dick's Sporting Goods. And he's like, no Dick's, no. He starts like shooing me away like this. I finally just give up and I'm like, yeah. So there's an Asian guy at King Prussia Mall that probably like reported the police on me that I was trying to get my dick massage in the middle of like a kiosk in the third biggest mall in America. So how was your week, man?
My week was pretty good. I've been to King of Prussia Mall. I didn't realize the story was going to go beyond you discovering that it was the third largest mall in America. Because yeah, it's enormous. But no, you put a whole extra spin on that. I did not see that plot twist coming down.
I think I'm banned. I think I'm banned from the whole city of King Prussia. But this story is simply for entertainment. I'm not admitting to anything. This was just an entertainment. I'm not admitting that this really happened.
Nope.
Anyways, want to break down these fights?
Yeah, let's. All right, I got Costa versus Borjas.
I told you it'd be pretty good. People will like that story.
That's amazing.
The funniest thing was when I didn't even catch on that he thought I was massaging my dick. Like I was still like watching the softball game and I go, holy shit, that guy thought I was asking him to massage my dick. And then I should never went back. I should just like put my head down and walked. No, I fucking went back. This guy's probably like, damn, how horny is this guy?
It's like, first up on the UFC 301 prelims is a men's flyweight matchup between Alessandro Costa and Kevin Borjas. Costa, the 28-year-old Brazilian by way of Mexico, is 13-4 overall. He's 1-2 since joining the UFC as a veteran of season 6 of Dana White's Contender Series, where he competed and won but was not immediately signed. He was signed at the end of 2022. Since then, again, 1-2 with extremely excusable losses to Amir Albazi and Steve Erceg, and sandwiched around a stoppage win over Jimmy Flick. So he'll look to get to 500 in the UFC at the same time as his opponents. Borjas, 26-year-old Peruvian, is 9-2 overall. He is 0-1 since joining the UFC as a veteran of season 7 of the Contender Series. He debuted at UFC 295 back in November, where he dropped a unanimous decision to Josh Van. Odds on this one are pretty close. Keith, we have a couple of wide lines on this card. We also have some pretty close ones. I won't quiz you because I already told you almost all the Brazilians are favored. Costa is a slight favorite. He's -150. Borjas +120 on the comeback. I like this fight. These are two young prospects. They're both under 500 in the UFC right now, but in both cases, I don't think it's an indication that they suck or they have no upside or they aren't UFC material or even that they aren't potentially future contenders. Costa, he's a guy just turned 28 years old. He's already fought Amir Albazi and Steve Erceg. Erceg is fighting for the title later on Saturday night, and Albazi probably could, should, or will be as soon as he's healthy and ready to go. So that's not bad. And the one time he was matched against a lower level guy, he destroyed Jimmy Flick. He seems to be, well, he is another one of this little pipeline of talent coming out of Brazil through Lobo Gym. That would be him. Diego Lopez, who's making huge waves at 145. That's turning into a really good gym for lower, kind of the lower weight classes in general, I think. He's a well-rounded guy. He's a good athlete. Against Borjas, I have the feeling he's going to kind of take over and dictate what happens in this fight. Borjas' UFC debut was a lot of fun. He went in against Josh Van. Josh Van is a very solid prospect in his own right, but the main thing about Van is he's an incredible athlete. He's puts on a ridiculous pace, and he's this really hyperkinetic fighter, almost to his own detriment sometimes. I mean, the times Van has lost, he's either tired himself out or just been too reckless and gotten caught with stuff. But Borjas, despite not being a sensational athlete by men's flyweight standards, kind of kept up with Van pretty well for 3 rounds. Just the problem is it always felt like he was a step behind, just reacting to what Van wanted to do. And so he was able to keep up. He didn't get blown out of the water or anything, but he won a close first round, and then again just seemed to be trying to keep up with Van for the rest of the time. I think Costa can put a similar type of performance on Borjas. Borjas is a good striker, and despite looking at his record and seeing that he has no submissions, no wins by submission anyway, the times that he and Van went to the ground, he was more than capable of taking care of himself. He did well in the scrambles. I just think I think Costa is just a more advanced fighter at this point. I think he's a more athletic fighter. Of the two of them, he probably has the greater upside. Borjas will probably turn into a guy who sticks around in the UFC flyweight division for a long time. Like I've said in recent weeks that Peruvian fighters are sort of becoming what Korean fighters were 12 or 15 years ago, where they're just aggressive, all action guys that the UFC loves to have to fill out cards with. Whereas Costa, despite being 1 and 2 in the UFC right now, he's a guy I could see having top 15 upside at some point. Give me Costa by decision in a really, really fun fight that gets this one off with a bang. And I would say it might look a little something like the Van fight, like frantic kickboxing interspersed with some occasional frantic sequences on the ground, but primarily 2 guys that want to stand and bang.
Yeah, you know what I was just thinking about, being that this is a flyweight fight? Imagine something happens to Pantoja and he can't fight, and suddenly Borjas is bumped at the main event in an interim title fight against Erceg.
Like Joe Soto's at home sitting up pointing at his TV. You got this, kid.
That'd be fantastic. I'm actually rooting for that to happen now. Just whatever. Let's have some chaos go. Costa. So I like flyweights. You know, to me, it's one of the funnest divisions. Start the card off with, kind of end capping with the beginning and ending of flyweights. You always got to get action in flyweights fights. And Costa, he's a short, stacked, jacked flyweight. He kind of fights in bursts. He lulls and then he explodes with power shots. He can be low output, which this really isn't the division to have a low output, but he kind of has to do because of how stacked he is. He didn't have the best output in his Dana White Contender Series match. He likes to get in the pocket, and he throws hard, wild hooks, trying to end the fight with every single blow he throws. That's what I mean when he has low output, the way he fights. He works to the body. That's a big part of his game, which I like. He's got hard, thudding calf kicks, good body kicks. He can look for a takedown, but I'd say he's more of a grappler than a wrestler. but he has 6 subs on his record, so if he gets a fight there, he can be an issue. Borjas, what I like about him, he's still only 26. He's a very aggressive striker, good output, pressure striker. He's the guy who wants to press the action. The difference, the reason why he lost that Van fight is Van was very good. Van's an excellent prospect, but he's also, was pressuring him back, forcing him on his back foot. I like his hands, though. He's got fast hands, pretty accurate. He's got a nice jab. I like his straight right. It's very short and clean. He's got some good zip on his shots. I like his step-in knees. Not the best defense. He's one of these guys who's willing to eat a shot to land a bombers of his own. And I don't know if he really wants to have that strategy against a guy like Costa, who could end the fight with one big shot. He can also overthrow his shots, kind of leaving them open to kind of a little wild. He doesn't check leg kicks. Not much of an offensive wrestler. He's kind of a weaker defensive wrestler. He kind of struggles to get off the bottom, but he's got good cardio. I mean, he's going to go hard all 50 minutes pressing the action. I think it's a really fun scrap. I've kind of wavered back and forth because I kind of like both of us. Like, to me, they're not highly ranked flyweights, but I could see one of these guys becoming ranked one day. I think they're both action fights. I'm going to go the opposite. I'm going to go with Borjas. I think he's faster. I think he's more accurate. I think both guys got to have moments. It's probably not the wisest decision for me to pick a non-Brazilian to get a close decision to Brazil, but I'm going to go with Borjas to win a decision.
All right. Keith comes right out the gate picking underdogs. We know what kind of night it's going to be. Next up on the UFC 301 prelims, we have the remade 155-pound matchup between Ismael Bonfim and Vinc Pichel. These two had been scheduled to fight at UFC Sao Paulo. That was the Almeida versus Lewis fight night card on November 4th of last year. Bonfim came in at 159.5 pounds. He declined to try to even drop any more weight, and Pichel refused to take the fight. Make of that what you will. Whoever you think came out of that looking better or worse, but they remade the fight. And for what it's worth, the odds makers, or at least the bettors who drive the lines, don't seem to have placed too much stock in it, because Bonfim was a massive favorite going into their first matchup. He was out there around minus 500. He is still sitting there at minus 450 or so. Pichel at plus 325, plus 320. We previewed that ahead of that fight. Has anything happened to make you feel substantially different about your take on that fight?
No, I'm still taking the same winner, but I'll say this. I'm on Pichel's side. Like, I'm on the side of any fighter who's not willing to take a fight with someone who misses weight. And that's not what you signed the contract for. So I'm cool. I'm cool with Pichel turning it down.
No, I'm with you. Speaking just ethically, who's in the right, I definitely support Pichel here. And there's a certain amount of Bonfim came off a little entitled, where he figured, especially in Brazil, I'm sure he's thinking back to Mackenzie Dern missing weight by 7 pounds and Amanda Bobby Cooper getting, at the time, Cooper getting strong-armed into fighting her anyway. I imagine he thought something like that was going to happen, and it just didn't.
It's funny. You ever see the video? There's like a highlight. It's on, like, I don't know, TikTok or Instagram or some. It's definitely not Instagram, so I don't have Instagram. But one of these, maybe it's Facebook Shorts, and someone made a video, and it's always Mackenzie Dern trying to shake Amanda Bobby Cooper's hand, and they do it like 3 or 4 times, and he keeps trying to make Amanda Bobby Cooper doesn't shake her hand, and then she starts the fight, the same thing, and then finally you see Mackenzie Dern beat her. And I always say the same thing, like, yeah, they're trying to make like Amanda Bobby Cooper as this like asshole with not shaking her hand, but they're leaving out the context that she's pissed off that her opponent like missed weight and
weight 2/3 of the way to the next weight class up.
Yeah. And it was like, there's not a lot, they need some context in that.
Yeah, that's
poor Amanda Bobby Cooper.
They're trying to make that into like Ronda Rousey versus Miesha Tate on tough. Like, no, this was not an even thing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, just sit tight. Watch this ancient footage from last November. We'll be back with you in a minute. Keith, we are back for the main card of UFC Fight Night 231, Almeida versus Lewis. We lost 5 or 6 fighters to injury off of this card in the weeks leading up to the bout, and none of them was Vinc Pichel. What a time of miracles we live in.
Yeah.
The 6-fight main card of UFC Sao Paulo opens up with a lightweight matchup between Ismael Bonfim, one of 2 Bonfim brothers on this card, and the veteran Pichel. Bonfim, 27-year-old Brazilian. is 19-4 overall. He's 1-1 since joining the UFC out of the 2022 season of Dana White's Contender Series. He debuted with a sensational win, second round knockout of Terrence McKinney back in January, came back in July and got tapped out in the first round with an extremely uncomfortable looking face crank by Benoit Saint-Denis. So he'll be looking to get back on track. He had what I think was a 12 or 13 fight win streak snapped in July. So he's looking to start a new one against Pichel. Pichel, the 40-year-old from Southern California by way of Englewood, Colorado. He's 14-3 overall. Just the fact that Ismael Bonfim is 13 years younger and has a lot more fights tells you a lot of what you need to know about Vinc Pichel. Anyway, he's 14-3 overall. He's 7-3 since joining the UFC out of the 15th season of The Ultimate Fighter. He was on Tough 15 and he only has 10 fights in the UFC. I'm not saying that Tough 15 was a long time ago, but he's one of, I think, only 2 alums of that season left in the UFC alongside Michael Chiesa, who barely is. He's at the desk far more often than he's in the cage. I mean, this is the season that gave us James Vick, Ali Akinta, Miles Jury.
Good season.
Here's how long ago Tough 15 was. Cristiano Marcelo was on that season.
Yeah.
He is the coach of Vitor Petrino and Eliseo Zaleski dos Santos. And Eliseo Zaleski dos Santos is almost 37 years old.
Yeah.
That's how long ago Tough fucking 15 was.
You named the guys. That was a good season. Going by talent-wise.
Yeah, talent-wise, good season talent-wise. It's had multiple title contenders, title challengers. But Pichel, obviously, he's been very good when he's in the cage. He's 7-3 in the UFC with some actual quality wins over quality fighters, but his is a story of injuries, repeated injuries. And I'm just going to quote myself from the article I wrote about that season a couple years ago. Unlike some fighters who struggle with repeated injuries to one body part, Fedor's hands, Shogun's knees, Pichel visits the hospital like a man trying to finish a bingo card. Shoulder surgery? Check. Bicep surgery? Check. Hip surgery? Check. A hit and run accident on his motorcycle that stripped half the skin off his back? Bingo. Vinc Pichel never met an ER that he didn't want to go into and visit. And it's a shame because, again, coming out of that season and at his best and at the time of his best wins, he looked like a potential top 10 guy, but just multiple layoffs of over a year. He's fought once a year, every year since 2018. Just with injuries in between, getting older, still shows signs of life when he gets out there and fights. But yeah, just those are fast moving waters. If you fight once a year, even if you win every single time, you're just never going to get any traction. He's coming in off a loss. He fought back in April, dropping a unanimous decision to Mark O. Madsen. This will be the first, okay, knock on wood, well, knock on glass in the case of my desk. If he makes it to the cage on Saturday, this will be the first time he's fought twice in a calendar year since 2018. Needless to say, he is not favored to get it done against the red-hot Bonfim. Bonfim is minus 480, is about the best you can find on him. Pichel out there around plus 360 or so. Keith, to what extent are you high on Bonfim as a 155-pound prospect, and how much can Vinc Pichel teach us about him?
Yeah, I'm not as high on him as I am his brother, but I'm still pretty high on him. Vinc Pichel, on the other hand, the guy is so inactive. I forget that he exists at time. Like when I'm going through, I think I've said this before. I always write down all the names of the fighters and who I want to kind of preview first, and then kind of rank them. Obviously the guys making their debut, I'm going to check out them first, and then kind of work from there. When I wrote down Vinc Pichel, I was like, oh my God, he's still on the roster. Like I kind of forgot him. You said that he all these injuries, he's always visiting hospitals. Plus, the way he fights, he's going to go to the hospital too if he actually does make it to the cage. He's not a great athlete. He's very flat-footed, but I mean the dude's tough. I mean, when he gets in there, he's high output, just marches down his opponents with throwing strikes. Not the fastest of hands, but he'll set up his stuff well with feints. Willing to eat a shot to land some of his own because he trusts his chin. Good kicking game, especially to the legs. He uses, he's got very physically strong guy. He'll get in the clinch and use his strength in there. He'll drop down on the legs and look for a takedown. One note I wrote of him a while ago is he's a better wrestler than I credit him with. And then I remember him. I mean, and if you take him down, he's hard to hold down. Now, Bonfim, he's the opposite. He's this great athlete. He's a Muay Thai style striker, a counter striker. He sees strikes coming at him and he counters well. He's good at beating his opponent to the point of contact, very accurate. You go back to his UFC win against Terrence McKinney. I mean, he looked incredible in that fight. Works behind a Chris jab, works the body. I love his left hook to the body. He sits on his punches, so he draws pretty good power. He'll wing his power shots at his opponent. I shouldn't say wing. That sounds like that. Like, just whips it. He's got good snap on his shots. He does well to wrap his shots around his opponent's punches, which I like. I love that he throws really hard kicks and also goes down to the body. Incredible flying knee knockout of Terrence McKinney also. Defensively, he's got some issues. Pillars will back straight up. Good ground fighter. He can wrestle. He's got some good entries. Physically strong. If you get a limb, he can slam his opponent. Definitely more BJ style than a traditional wrestler. He's got 4 submission wins, but as you saw in his last fight, he's not flawless on the ground. So Pichel is tough. I mean, he's 40 years old and with a slew of injuries, it's hard to have any confidence in him. And Bonfim, I still think has, even though despite having a setback, he looks like he could be a future contender. I say he styles on Pichel. Pichel is smart. He's got that like Gerald Mearshot thing where he's going to put himself in the best chance of winning. I just think the level of athleticism is too much. I think eventually, all those wars and injuries and age and everything, it's going to have to finally catch up to him. But I think Bonfim's the guy who's going to do it to him. Give me Bonfim to knock him out in the second round.
I love that you made the Gerald Mearshart comparison, because what I was going to lead with is that Vince Pichel is what it looks like when you give somebody Darren Elkins' approach to fighting without the physical durability to make it work. But Mearshart is another good example where Mearshart knows his best routes to victory, knows that against faster, more explosive fighters, he's probably going to have to take a little punishment and wait for his spot or wait for a guy to get tired. And for the most part, he's been able to make it work. Pichel can't. I thought he was a decent athlete 12 years ago when he was on Tough. That's faded. And again, a 5. He was a 5. And that's only faded as he's had the laundry list of injuries I mentioned, plus just, being 40 years old, 41 in a couple weeks. He's not, barely 40. He's almost 41. 41 is old in any division other than heavyweight, but at lightweight, it's something. There have been a few guys that have had surprising success, at or past age 40 in this division, but not many. And Pichel would not be your choice of candidate for it, considering how much wear he's got. I agree with you that his wrestling is surprisingly good. I mean, he can be exploited by an elite wrestler. His 3 losses in the UFC to Rustam Khabilov, Gregor Gillespie, and Marco Madsen. I mean, those are definitely 2 of the more decorated wrestlers and 3 of the better overall wrestlers that have passed through the division in his time. But against other guys that are pretty good wrestlers, your Jim Miller types, he's been more than fine. But you went right to the heart of it at the end there. His approach to the fight, the only thing that gives him whatever chance of victory he has against most opponents is going to be poison against Bonfim. Marching forward and throwing good volume against someone that's going to have such a speed and power advantage in Bonfim, it's going to be like walking into a wood chipper. I don't know if he makes it to the second round, but if he makes it to the second round, he's going to look like he's been hit by another car on his motorcycle. Bad matchup. And Bonfim is the kind of guy that if he wants to try and surprise Pichel as Pichel plods forward, I think he could get an easy reactive takedown just because he's so much faster. He could be on Pichel's hips and kind of dumping him on the map before he knows it. You said Bonfim styles on him. I think that's a pretty good summation of it. I don't remember what round you said, but I'm going with Bonfim by second round TKO that probably gets finished on the ground. Next up on the UFC 301 prelims, women's flyweights take the cage as Dione Barbosa faces off against Ernesta Kareckaite. Barbosa, the 31-year-old Brazilian, is 6-2 overall. This will be her UFC debut. She fought on the Contender Series last September, tapping out Rain Guerrero in the first round. She'll be taking on a fellow Season 7 graduate in Kareckaite. 25-year-old Lithuanian is 5-0-1 overall. She fought on the Contender Series also in September, just a couple weeks after Barbosa did, taking a split decision over Carly Judici. Odds here, Barbosa is a pretty comfortable favorite. She's minus 210, Kareckaite plus 170 on the comeback. I watched a couple of, well, obviously, I did tape study for this, and these are two people making their debut. I watched as much tape as was available. Ernesta Kareckaite has a problem that I feel as though I've accused several women over the past month or so of our previews of having. She is a tall, rangy woman that would prefer to have an outside kickboxing match and does not have the footwork or the muscle to enforce that on women that want to crash the pocket against her. Kareckaite, she's only fought 6 times as a pro. 2 of her fights were against Letitia Blot in Hexagon MMA in France. And Blot is about 5'2" and built like a little tank. Kareckaite, if you haven't seen her, she's 5'9". She's an extremely tall flyweight. And she beat Blot. The first fight was a draw. The second one, she won a split decision. I actually thought she probably should have won both fights, but both fights were characterized by Blot just kind of putting her head down, running straight in, grabbing Kareckaite, running her straight into the cage, and not really letting her get off the weapons that she wanted to. And Kareckaite, I mean, she's decent as an in-fighter. Despite how tall she is, she doesn't have incredible reach. You'll see her like she's all legs. But basically, her best future may actually lay at 135 pounds. She's going to look a little skeletal at 125. You guys will see on Saturday. Yeah. Maybe a little more muscle, and she'd be better off at 135. It's a worse division anyway right now. But so far, Kareckaite has gotten away with not being able to manage that distance just because she hasn't taken on anybody that can really, really make her pay on the ground. That ends on Saturday. Barbosa's going to take her down, and she's going to maul her down there. Barbosa, it's not like she's not built like Jessica Andrade. She's sort of a normally built 125-pounder, maybe a slightly big one, but she's strong. She's athletic. Like, in terms of her physical gifts, she makes me think of someone like, who is the title contender that the UFC just let go to PFL? Her name is
Talia Santos.
Yeah, like in terms of just her general build, she's got a little bit of a Talia Santos thing going on. I think Barbosa is gonna get a hold of Kareckaite, put her on the ground early, ground and pounder, probably get either a topside submission, like she has 2 armbar submissions. She armbarred Rain Guerrero on the Contender Series, but I don't think she's gonna have to go fishing from her back from that. I think it'll be a thing where she's gonna pound on Kareckaite until she turns her back and either choke her out or peel off for an armbar or something. But for 2 women that are not bad, neither of them is a bad prospect. This is a bad matchup for Kareckaite. I think Barbosa dominates on her way to a first-round submission win.
Yeah, this is I like both additions to the UFC. I think both girls are pretty good. Obviously, Barbosa is the one that gets a little more buzz, being, she's a former Olympian in judo. She's a really good athlete. I mean, she moves well. You think Olympian judo, you think grappling, but I don't mind her striking. She got pretty fast hands. She attacks with combinations. She throws hard kicks. She tossed up a quick high kick. Obviously, she's most comfortable if she can battle in the clinch. Obviously she has throws and foot sweeps and all that, but she's also a BJJ black belt. Not that I think that matters too much when you're an Olympian in judo. You should have, she has good back take. She has a good submission game. You mentioned her armbar on the Contender Series. I mean, it was an incredible armbar. It was beautiful. It was like something we don't see that often in modern MMA. She also hit a nice sweep in that, and when she was on bottom. Kareckaite, I like that she's only 25. You talk about her like length and her body structure. She's long length. She's huge for the weight class. She reminds me of, I don't know if they have them in Texas, but they have this is like new sensation here in Rhode Island during Halloween. They sell these like 12-foot skeletons that stand outside your house. Have you seen these things?
Yes.
I have neighbors around the corner here that they have two of them, like neighbors back to back, 2 in a row. They still have them up. Like one's decorating it. It's got like Cinco de Mayo stuff on it. The other one's just white trash and just has garbage all over the place. It just fits. Like it just, I don't know. Just for some reason, I bet you they're really big into like bare knuckle boxing or something. But yeah, that's what she just reminds me of, like one of those big giant 12-foot
now
skeletons.
Picture that skeleton just looming over like this rusting engine block on this dude's lawn or something.
Oh no! I'm gonna take a picture for all you guys. Like, I mean, there's like the rest of the neighborhood is nuts. Like, this is what I did today. I went to my daughter's 2 softball games, my son's football game, and then I put fertilizer on my grass. My neighbor's mows his lawn. All the rest of the neighbors have a nice house, and then we call it the Grant gang. We turn down Grant. I don't know what happens. It just turns into a freaking white trash central. And this guy's like, he thinks on 8 Mile, he's got like mattresses and trash and I don't know. I think it's like a freaking toilet outside and
8 Mile.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like, what the hell? Anyways. I think I saw Wes Sims sleeping on his front lawn. I don't know what's going. Anyways, I mean, I like both fighters. I really do. I mean, Karekkai's size and output. Actually, I didn't even break down her skills yet. So I don't know if she wants to fight from distance because she really presses the action forward. And she's someone who has this huge length, but she gets right in her opponent's face with nonstop action, incredible pace, incredible pressure, great, like very aggressive, great output. She has some kickboxing experience. She got fast hands. She's accurate. She throws straight shots down the pipe, has a very hard kicks. The problem is she doesn't move. Like her head is right on the center line, very hittable. I haven't seen too much for a ground game, but I love her cardio. Like, I mean, her fight on the Contender Series was freaking bonkers. Like, it was non-stop output. I mean, her size and output is going to be an issue for a lot of people in the division. That said, I don't think Barbosa is the person. I think Barbosa gets the clinch, especially because you said Kareckaite, you think to be a position she should be great at, being that she's big, but she actually lets her opponent dictate the position, the head position. I actually thought she lost the battle on the Contender Series with the clinch. Now, I thought she won the fight. Mm-hmm. I thought it was crazy that she won a split decision, but like that position really didn't favor her. I think Barbosa gets the fight to the ground, and I think she does what she does. I think she locks in submission. I think she gets a sub in the very first round. Give me Barbosa by first round submission.
We head back to the lightweight division next for a matchup between the debuting Mauricio Ruffy and Jamie Mullarkey. Ruffy, the 27-year-old Brazilian, is 9-1 overall. He fought on the Contender Series in October, knocking out Raymond Magomedaliev in the 3rd round. He's on a 4-fight winning streak overall. He'll look to extend it to 5 and make a successful UFC debut at the expense of Mullarkey. 29-year-old Australian is 17-7 overall. He's an even 5-5 in the UFC. He has alternated wins and losses throughout last year, beating Francisco Prado, losing to Muhammadjan Naimov, beating John Makdessi, and losing to Nasrat Haqparast. So if the pattern holds, he's due for a win. I'm sure he'd love to have one. He is not favored to get it done. Ruffy is minus 165, Mullarkey plus 135. Keith, you and I are both on record as liking Jamie Mullarkey. Like, he's not big, he's not athletic, he's just a scrappy dude. Tell me what Mauricio Ruffy is good at other than sounding like Scooby-Doo is calling a member of my family.
Nice one. That's good. That was a good line. I mean, Jamie Mullarkey, we like him because he's our kind of guy. Like, we kind of like these non-athletes who just fight hard and bite down to their mouth gear. He's not very technically sound. He wins by out.
Just real quick, interject. I wouldn't be shocked if Mullarkey washed out of the UFC this year. Like, he lost his next 2 fights and the UFC cut him. I also wouldn't be shocked if he was still in the UFC 9 years from now and he was just like a Tim Means type and he was like, absolutely. 16 and 12 in the UFC with 10 bonuses.
Absolutely.
Either thing could happen.
upsets like the hot prospect that coming in 2 years from now. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that's a perfect summary of him.
Yeah,
he's a guy that if he's going to win, he's going to win with output. He's going to constantly press the action, force his opponent in the back foot. It's been a while now, but I just go back to like the Devontae Smith fight. When you look at the skill set, Devontae Smith had way more skills, but just crumbled with the volume of Mullarkey. He will still get in trouble because of his limited athleticism. Like if he faces a physical freak like a Jalen Turner, there's just some people he's not going to be able to overcome. But the next tier down, he's going to make it tough. He's going to work behind the jab. He's going to constantly like L step in, cutting angles to set up his offense. He has surprising power. I mean, he knocked out Smith in that fight. He knocked out Kama Worthy. He likes to work the body. He will wrestle, and he wrestles to win rounds. He's not a guy that he's not a Dagestan where he's blasting through, but he's going to get the fight to the ground with good entries. He's going to chain together well. He has that unbreakable spirit where if it ain't working, he'll keep trying. He'll improve the position when he hits the ground. He did it against Prado in their fight. He get the fight to the ground, constantly moving. If he gets taken down himself, he'll work right back to his feet, right back on his opponent, trying to break his will. He has cardio to do this the entire fight. The issue is because of that style, you have to have great durability. And that has not been the case lately. He's really, he's been stopped 3 out of his last 6 fights. Even one of his wins against John McDessie, he was hurt bad in that fight. And then that was a win. You move over to a Ruffy. Ruffy, he has this very like bladed stance. He likes to switch stance a lot, but I think he's actually better in the orthodox stance. I don't think he's that good in southpaw. He's a good striker, sets up his shots with feints well. He also hand fights a lot. His counter right is his best punch. He's very good at pulling his opponents into his power shots and good at timing his opponent, beating them to the point of attack. I like the way he throws his right hand. He throws on like a little bit of an angle, so it kind of goes right over the top of his left hand. Like if someone throws a jab, he'll kind of go over the jab and, around the punch. He's got good head movement. He kind of needs it because he keeps his hands so wide and he kind of keeps his chin high in the air. He'll throw out some spinning attacks, a lot of kicks, mean body kicks, got a good high kick. He's got good power. All of his wins have come by KO. Due to that bladed stance, he is open to leg kicks. I haven't seen too much of his ground game. Jamie Lockett, if he's got a hole in his ground game, Jamie Lockett is a guy that will expose it. He doesn't really have a sub on his record. I haven't been that impressed with what I've seen of Ruffy, and I like Mullarkey a lot. I just don't trust his durability enough to fight the way that he always has. I think it's been fun. I just think the time in the UFC is kind of really coming to an end. I think Ruffy catches him and ends him with a shot. I say he does it in the second round. Give me a Ruffy by second round TKO.
Yeah. It would be a shame if the Mullarkey Express is already grinding to a halt. And you put it perfectly. The way he fights, he's an old 29. He's taken a bunch of shots at his size with his approach, and even in victories, he's gonna get hit a lot. You mentioned John McDessie rung him up pretty good, and the 2023 version of McDessie, he's been surprisingly successful, but if Mullarkey is already getting in trouble against that type of fighter, maybe the end is coming sooner than later. One thing he will have going for him here is that Ruffy has kind of bounced back and forth between welterweight and lightweight. This is him coming in at lightweight after having competed at welterweight on the Contender Series, having competed at welterweight in at least 1 or 2 of his last 3 fights in Brazil. If that affects his durability at all, if it affects his cardio at all, I could see Mullarkey pulling ahead later. And I'm probably going to regret this when he starts as Mullarkey in 3 minutes, but that's my call here. Mullarkey probably has some rough sledding in the early going. He's going to be fighting a bigger, faster guy who hits harder on a shot-for-shot basis. But give me Mullarkey to survive that and just gut out rounds 2 and 3, maybe smart enough to mix in some takedowns, either to actually take Ruffy down and do work, or at least to get his own chin off the gunnery range for that much time. But give me Mullarkey to squeak out a win here by decision in the slight to moderate upset.
I just think about you talking about Mullarkey being like an old 29-year-old, and I'm just thinking like we have like a game, like, hey, Jamie, come over to play some games. We're like, we're gonna pull out high-low jack, maybe we'll play some poker, and he comes over and he's like, he wants to play bingo or backgammon or something. Just an old 29-year-old man.
His cardio is pickleball. Like he's like with the YMCA, just playing pickleball with 60-year-olds. We stay in the lightweight division for a clash between Joaquim Silva and Drakkar Klose. Silva, the 35-year-old Brazilian, is 13-4 overall. He is 6-4 in the UFC. He is coming in off a win. He fought twice last year. He got knocked out by Arman Tsarukyan in June. No shame there. Came back and took a unanimous decision over Clay Guida at UFC on ESPN Dariush versus Tsarukyan in December. So he'll look to make it 2 wins in a row here against Klose. 36-year-old Michigan native by way of Arizona is 14-2-1 overall. He is 8-2 in the UFC, and he is on a 3-fight win streak since getting knocked out by Beneil Dariush. Goodness, 4 years ago at this point. He has wins over Brandon Jenkins, Rafa Garcia, and Joe Solecki. The Solecki fight was his only cage appearance of 2023. He slammed him and put him out in under 2 minutes at the same Dariush versus Tsarukyan fight night. That's the good news. The bad news is that was his first fight in almost 18 months. He's been plagued by injuries. Again, he's only fought 3 times in the 4 years since the Dariush loss, but he'll look to make it 4 wins in a row, and he is favored to do so. Klose -200, Silva +160. Keith, now, Joaquim Silva, he is the BJJ kid. That's what his nickname stands for. He hasn't tapped anyone out in the UFC in, I think, 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
And he's mostly a muscle-bound slugger. It's one of the funniest nicknames in the UFC. If we're being, I mean, unless he did it to be intentionally deceptive.
Yeah.
Like,
it's up there with One Punch Pickett.
Yeah, Brad. Well, we've settled that one.
Yeah,
the nickname is that he throws one punch and then he shoots a double leg. Like, it's bad for Drakkar Klose when Neto BJJ has been fighting more than you have recently. These guys. I feel like they're prospects, and then because they don't fight that often. You kind of like you hang out and you have like your friend has kids. You haven't seen him like 3 years. He shows up and his kids like grew a foot. You're like, what the hell happened to these guys? That's how I feel like Neto and Drakkar Klose, like 36 and 35. I'm like, they should be on their way out the door. I feel like they're prospects. I could not possibly have said that better. And the thing is, and this is something that I've said a few times about lightweight, it is fast-moving traffic. It almost doesn't matter how good you are if you don't fight often enough to stay in the fans' minds and to stay in the UFC matchmakers' minds. Traffic is going to start passing you on the left, and that's what's happened to him. And it's always been that way. It's the reason that Khabib fought so long before really starting to fight top contenders, because he'd look incredible, he'd smother someone to death, and then he'd disappear for a year. Like, you look at Klose, and on paper, how do you get to 8-2 in the UFC? And really, his only loss in 6 years has been to Beneil Dariush.
Yeah,
like, he's beaten good people.
Yeah.
On talent and achievements, he looks like a borderline top 15 guy, and I just don't think of him that way because he disappears for a year at a time.
He's not even close.
No, he's not even close.
Pun intended.
Yeah. Well, dude, Drakkar Klose sounds like the name of like a fake cologne you would get at a kiosk at the mall. I know that you were
stop talking about kiosk at the mall.
You probably passed. You
can't talk about it. I can't.
Where you could get a bottle of Drakkar Klose.
Yeah, my lawyer said no more talking about the mall. Be silent.
Here, you would think, with one guy being called Neto BJJ, that this would be a striker versus grappler matchup, but it's more of a striker versus brawler matchup. Klose, if he gets his way, would like to keep things on the feet and snipe, counter. He has good power. He's not a terrible wrestler. Like, I think he's a better offensive than defensive wrestler, but he's a step above the God, why am I losing everybody's names? I'll cut this out. The blonde kid from Nebraska with the square head.
Drew Dober.
Thank you. Like, he's not Drew Dober from a standpoint of defensive wrestling. But here, I have the feeling that he's going to want to let Silva come in, slip, counter, use his footwork to escape out the side. Silva throws everything really hard. It'd be interesting if Silva tried to take Klose down and do work there. It'd be the most hilarious irony ever if, after us just going to town on him for having the inappropriate BJJ nickname, he decided to dust it off for this fight. But I don't see that happening. These are a 35 and 36-year-old guy. Those are old dogs by the standards of this division. I expect Klose is probably going to win a decision here that's characterized by Neto charging forward, swinging, Klose slipping enough of it and countering, and enough to win rounds. There's also the possibility he could knock Silva out. Silva's been caught by heavy hitters and put down. Klose is a hard hitter, but I'm going to say this one makes it to the final horn. Give me Klose by decision.
This I love his Silva knock him out, just screaming BJJ. I love when that happens. I want to see the opposite way. Like, I want to see a wrestler land a high kick and scream out like Iowa Hawkeyes wrestling or something, Shout out to Dan Gable. Shout out to the Brand brothers. Drakkar Klose. It's so funny. I'm glad. I hope nothing weird happens. I hope this fight happens because it seems like, I just forgot about these guys. And like you said, Klose is on a nice winning streak. He's a high output striker who, he's a bit of a pressure counter striker. I like his straight right. He does throw from his hips, which kind of leaves him open to counters, but he keeps his base underneath him. So he kind of really steps in the shot. And that's why he has some really good power. I mean, he has 6 TKOs. Even like the Beneil Dariush fight, he got knocked up. Don't forget, that was a wild fight. He had Dariush on skates at times in that fight. He has a really good calf kicking game. It's like big thudding kicks, but he doesn't check leg kicks. So he's kind of open to kicks himself. But he will look to get the fight. He's one of the guys, he'll catch a kick and take it down. He will close the distance and kind of use his size and his strength. He's kind of a bully. He can battle in the clinch. He'll land good elbows inside. He did so, I'm going back a while because of the fall, but he beat up Mark Diakese inside with, chest to chest, clinch battling. Definitely more of a clinch wrestler and a body lock guy than drive through your hips kind of fighter. Not as good a wrestler as you think he is, though. He was easily out grappled by Dariush. He did show how hard he is to submit, though, as Dariush had his back for long periods of that fight, and he gave up his back to kind of get back up against Dariush. So you go back to the Selecki, he slammed the shit out of Selecki, which is fun. He's a very strong guy. He has a little bit of a questionable chin. He was knocked out by Dariush. It was a while ago, so it's like he's got a long time off from then, but just questionable because he has to face that tier up. Silva, he's a guy who can fight at both stances. He beat up Jesse Ronson from the southpaw. He looked really good from the southpaw stance. He's got some tight boxing. Sets up his shots well with feints. He's got good power. He likes to work the body. He'll toss out some spinning attacks. He knocked Jesse Ronson out with a flying knee, hard body kicks. He's the one who wants to press the action. He doesn't really handle pressure back. He wants to be the one moving forward. He has been knocked out a lot, though. He doesn't, has some durability questions. He's been knocked out of 3 out of his last 5 fights. He isn't a strong wrestler, but he's got a good top game, because of his BJJ background, and he's hard to hold down. And he showed good cardio against Clay Guida in their fight. That was probably, I don't want to say the difference, but it was, a big factor for him. I really don't have a good read on this one, probably because of how inactive they are. I think Silva's a better athlete, but Klose is a dog. I say Klose closes the distance, gets some takedowns. I think he lands the hardest shot on the feet. I think he catches Silva's chin late in a back and forth fight. Give me Klose by second round TKO.
Featherweights are up next as John Silva faces William Gomis. Silva, the 27-year-old Brazilian, is 12-2 overall. He is 1-0 since joining the UFC out of season 7 of Dana White's Contender Series, and he is on a 9-fight win streak overall. He made his UFC debut at UFC Fight Night Ankalaev versus Walker 2 in January, knocking out the thoroughly overmatched Weston Wilson. So he'll look to make it 2 in a row here against a fellow prospect in Gomis. Gomis, 26 years old, Frenchman, 13-2 overall. He is 3-0 in the UFC and on an 11-fight win streak overall. He fought twice last year, taking a split decision over Francis Marshall in April, then coming back at UFC Paris in September and knocking out Yanis Gamuri with a body kick in the 3rd round. So he'll be looking to make it 4 in a row and certify himself as one of the more interesting prospects in the featherweight division. He's a slight underdog in that pursuit. Silva is -140, Gomis +115. Keith, tell me how you feel about these guys. Are two guys in their mid to late 20s. They're in the 145-pound division, which is a tough one to start scaling the ladder, but they're on long win streaks, and they've both looked pretty good in the UFC so far. Who you got, and who would you say has the greater upside?
Yeah, this is a tough one. Yeah, I mean, Silva's a more explosive athlete. So originally, when you say more upside, I instantly thought of him. But then on the flip side, Gomis has that like length, and that obviously can always be an issue. So he might have the more upside. So it's a really tough call. I don't feel like I have a really good read on either one of these guys, if I'm being honest. Gomis, he's a southpaw, kind of a very patient striker, kickboxer, kind of keeps his hands low. He likes to counter strike. He's got quick hands when he lets his hands go. He's got lots of power, good kicking game. I like his teep kicks up the middle. He'll throw some spinning attacks. He will look for takedowns, which I like, especially if you over pursue, like trying to crash the pocket. I'm trying to get inside of him. He has like a reactionary double. He drops down your hips, but I definitely wouldn't categorize him as a wrestler. He doesn't have the best top control. He's almost got subbed in his UFC debut. He did show solid takedown defense against Francis Marshall in their fight, which was an improvement from when I saw him on the regional scene. But when he's taken down, he kind of struggles to get back up. Gene Silva, he's a very athletic striker. He moves well. He likes to sit on the outside and kind of burst into the pocket and throw hard shots, kind of wild. He keeps his hands low. He's got a very hard left hook. He's got good power. He's got 8 KOs in his career. He definitely best when he gets inside the pocket. I like that he looks for knees and elbows. He has a like mean streak in him. He likes stepping knees, which I love. He's got a quick high kick, but he will load up on his shots, kind of telegraph a lot. He hates being pressured back too. He wants to be the one moving forward. Doesn't look to wrestle much. What I've seen of his takedown defense, it's pretty solid. He's got 2 submission wins, so he is a little bit of a threat there. And he's got good cardio. I mean, he throws a lot of power shots. I go back to the Contender Series fight. He was going hard, didn't slow down at all, throwing big shots. Like I said, I don't have a very strong read on either of these guys. One of these ones, like if I wish I had more time to kind of dig into tape study on these, when you got to do the whole card, it's tough. You can only spend so much time. This is probably one, if I had a couple more hours, I'd probably dig into this one, feel better about my pick. I'm not that high on either. I am going to go Gomes due to the fact that he's longer. He will wrestle. Going into Brazil is going to be tough, but I'm going to say he pulls a slight. You said he's underdog, right?
Yeah, just slightly. He's +115 or so.
Yeah, I say it's going to be a back and forth fight. Both had moments, but I think his wrestling might be the difference. Give me Gomes by split decision.
Yeah, I like the pick there. And I'm totally with you in that I don't feel as though I have a great read on either of these guys yet. They've looked good, but this may be the toughest opponent Gomis has fought, at least since fighting fellow top French prospects like Saladin Parnasse and Morgan Charrier way back at the beginning of his career.
Yeah.
Over the course of his current win streak, Silva might be the best fighter that Gomis has fought, and I'm pretty sure that Gomis is the best fighter that Silva has fought across his win streak. Silva looked incredible in Brazil, just thrashing overmatched guys. He hits really hard, so guys that couldn't keep up with him, he made it quick and definitive. He has a lot of first-round knockouts where he just overwhelms the guy from the jump, and honestly, Weston Wilson wasn't much different. Wilson It's great that he made it into the UFC, but I said at the time, that's one of the roughest signings I can remember like in a while.
He's selling solar panels now.
Whereas Gomis, the win over Francis Marshall was legit, not just because Marshall had been undefeated, but because of the way Gomis beat him. He got taken down and he did manage to get back up. And despite knowing that Marshall had the wrestling as a kind of outlet, Gomis touched him up with kicks throughout the fight. I like that. The fact that he found a way to make his best weapons work despite of the matchup in front of him. I mean, he was kicking Marshall to the legs, to the body. He slapped him in the face with a head kick that had him all like marked up within the first couple minutes of the fight. I like that a lot. I don't know if Gomis's best future eventually will lie at 155 pounds. I mean, you mentioned he is a huge featherweight, long and rangy, and he's kind of wiry and skinny right now. He's got a bit of an Adesanya type build, but he's just 26. It wouldn't take much to nudge him out of the realm of people that can make 145 in a healthy manner. But here, yeah, he's the slight underdog, but I like him to edge out the decision here as well. He throws out the kind of offense that I think is appealing to judges, just again, thinking of the Marshall fight where he's just reaching out with constant kicks, just slapping him to the legs, hitting to the body, going upstairs. You and I have both talked about where a head kick, even if it's blocked, it still looks like it hit. Even if it just like clatters uselessly off a guy's guard, it's something that is memorable. Give me Gomis to win a decision here. I'm not super confident in it, but I guess that's the reason this is one of the closest lines on the card. And this is your first, I don't know if it'll be your only unanimous Shillen and Duffy upset pick on the card. Next up on the UFC 301 undercard is a lightweight matchup, knock on wood, between Elves Brener and Myktybek Orolbai. Brener, the 26-year-old Brazilian, is 16-3 overall. He's 3-0 in the UFC. Fought 3 times last year, beating Zubaira Tukhugov, Guram Kataladze, and Kenan Khrushchevsky. The most recent of those, the Khrushchevsky fight, was at UFC São Paulo on November 4th. He knocked him out in the first round. Worth noting that fight took place at 165-pound catch weight because Khrushchevsky stepped up on short notice. He'll be back down at 155 pounds against Orolbai, who will be doing the same. 26-year-old from Kyrgyzstan is 12-1-1 overall. He is 1-0 in the UFC. He got signed, came in on short notice at UFC Fight Night Allen versus Craig in November. Is just 3 or 4 weeks removed from his last fight in LFA and took on Uroš Medic at welterweight, tapped him out with a neck crank in the second round. So he will look to go 2-0 in the UFC. He's moving down to 155 pounds for it, and he is favored to get it done. Orolbai minus 240, Brener plus 195. Keith, both of these guys are relatively new to the UFC. I mean, Brener has more fights, but they both debuted last year. Are you high on either of these guys in this division, and who you think wins on Saturday?
Yeah, I actually like both of you guys. I think they're one of the best matchups on the card. Brener is a guy he's really grown on me. Like when he first came in the UFC, he was not a guy that I was really amazed by his film, but he has looked really good. I mean, he's huge for the weight class. He's athletic. He moves well. I mean, he showed insane toughness against Kutaladze, who is a guy I also like. 8 shots and kept moving forward, pressing the action. He's a good striker. He attacks the combination. He switches stances in mid-combo to set up his shots well, which I love. He'll throw some flying attacks out. He hits hard. Defensively, he fights behind a high guard. He has some defense holds. He does keep his chin a little high in the air. He pulls his head straight back, which I don't like. He doesn't move side to side, which makes him a little bit hittable. He's a good wrestler. He likes to use his size and get the upper body takedowns. He showed good takedown defense against good wrestlers and Zubaira Tukhugov and Kutaladze. He gets in a lot of scrambles. He has a very funk style grappling game to him where he wins a lot of scrambles. Though if he gets put on bottom, he does struggle to get off the bottom of the pass. On top, he's got a hard ground and pound. He's a serious submitter. He's got 11 subs on his record. He can get subs off his back. He has a cardio to go all 50 minutes. And he's already shown he's beaten good guys in the UFC. Orolbai, What I love is this guy's only 26. On the feet, he's a pocket boxer. He has some good pop in his hand. He has 6 TKOs already in his career. His striking, though. Well, I like the way he throws his kicks. He throws like inside kicks to move his opponents, to kind of try to set up his right hand. A lot of his striking is to close distance, where he's a really, really good wrestler. I should talk about his defense. He doesn't move his head enough to me, which I don't like. He's a really good wrestler though. Like he's got fast entries. He's got a good top game. He has a little bit of a like Dagestani style to him, where he'll grab one limb. I mean, he did against Medich, where he just kept, Medich would try to switch. He'd get the far wrist, falling back on him. He showed a great strength. He has a submission. Well, he also stays glued to his opponent, but then if he gets a moment, he'll take his back, and he's a submission threat. He's got a lot of subs already in his record. This is an interesting fight. I like both guys, and I'm going to like the winner a lot moving forward. Brener has more avenues victories, and he's actually beaten guys, high-level guys already. But the one thing I like Orolbai is he understands his avenue of victory and will do everything he can to get it there. He's a really good wrestler. Brener has struggled a little bit in the past stopping takedowns. I think that's exactly what happened to. I'm going to say Orolbai wins a wrestling match and just stays glued to Brener. Brenner's going to be tossing up submissions, but Orolbai's winning the position battle. Give me Orolbai by decision.
I know you're probably right, and I know I'm probably wrong, but I see the breakdown of the fight very similarly to you. But I hope because I'm making the pick. I think that Brener will manage to stay upright enough, or at least avoid going to the ground on the bottom enough to win 2 rounds out of 3 here. Even though these guys are about the same age, like I'm a little higher on Brenner's upside. I think he's a little bit more athletic. While he's not as good at Orolbai's specialty as Orolbai is, I think he's more well-rounded. I mean, you look at his early tape, and he really was a grappler, like by specialty, who spent a lot of time on the bottom against fighters where he probably didn't have to. He's gotten out of that phase, but I still think he's a good grappler. You mentioned like he's a big guy. It's worth kind of watching on weigh-ins day, because both of these guys fought well north of 155 pounds in their last fight, and they're both big dudes. So it'll be interesting. Like, I'm taking Brener by decision here. And again, I think Brener has the greater upside. It, like right now, probably represents Orolbai's best chance to get Brener. If they fought again a year, 2 years from now, I think Brener will start to leave him behind a little bit. And so watch me pick this and just watch Orolbai absolutely big brother him exactly the way he did Medich. But my pick is in Brener by decision in what looks like an almost 2-1 upset. But yeah, give me the upset here.
When you say the pick is in, you're gonna have that like NFL draft noise sounding. They make that little jingle.
250,000 people watching me on a big screen. Like, yeah.
And the Falcons pick another quarterback.
Kirk Cousins better go cash that check real quick. Second from the top of the UFC 301 undercard is a strawweight matchup between Karolina Kowalkiewicz and Iasmin Lucindo. Kowalkiewicz, the 38-year-old Pole, is 16-7 overall. She's 9-7 in the UFC. She is, of course, a former strawweight title challenger. She took on her countrywoman, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, at UFC 205 all the way back in 2016. Came out on the wrong side of a pretty lopsided decision, but she stuck around ever since. And believe it or not, the woman is on a 4-fight win streak right now. She fought twice last year, taking decisions over Vanessa Demopoulos and Diana Belbita. She'll look to make it 5 in a row and continue her improbable resurgence at the expense of Lucindo. 22-year-old Brazilian is 15-5 overall. She's 2-1 in the UFC. She fought twice last year, winning both times. She took a unanimous decision over Brogan Walker in April, came back in August at UFC on ESPN, Luque versus Dos Anjos, and tapped out Poliana Viana in the second round. So she'll look to make it 3 in a row here. mince herself a future, maybe near future contender in the division. She is heavily favored to do so. There are, I believe, 3 fights on this card with at least a 4-1 favorite. This is one of them. Lucindo minus 400, Kowalkiewicz plus 300. I don't mistake, or I don't misremember Karolina Kowalkiewicz's game overall, but there are certain things that I always have to remember. I always think she's taller than she is, just because she's sort of lean and wants to fight an outside kickboxing match so badly. I always assume she's taller than she is. And she's taking on someone here in Lucindo that I always think Lucindo is shorter than she is until she gets out there, just because she's compact. She fights kind of compact. According to like our tail of the tape, Lucindo's actually taller than Kowalkiewicz. I don't know if it'll play out that way in the cage. Those are always suspect by an inch or two.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Nobody really measures. Like here's a tip, guys. Nobody really measures these fighters.
So let's get Dev out there. Dev, get out there to Brazil.
Yeah.
And get the tape measure and let's find out how tall these are.
Yeah. No, what you want to do? Bring your tape measure.
Yeah,
bring your tape measure. Go to the King of Prussia Mall. There's a massage place. Just hold out your tape measure and yell dick, dick, dick.
Yeah. Can we just get? I do want someone that we could just give them weird assignments. Like that would make the show so much better. Just like setting Dev to do things like that. Like go find out exactly how tall Lucindo is. Anytime that I'm physically in a gym, I try to estimate it. Like just for example, on every Wednesday night, I see at least Alex Morono and Ricky Tercios, and we're both barefoot and we're looking right at each other. Like if Alex wasn't 5'11", I would have changed it by now. Ricky's my exact same height, like 5'9". We need to get somebody out there in every gym. Just kind of don't even have to bring the tape measure. Just kind of eyeball them. That's it. That's Dev's new assignment.
It's on you, Dev. Kowalkiewicz, I mean, she went on that 5-fight losing streak where we kind of assumed, at least I assumed, that she was done. I assumed that the UFC had either cut her or she had just quietly retired, because she seemed like the kind of person that had enough other irons in the fire that she'd retire without making a big deal about it. And then she came back. She's won 4 in a row. And while Felice Herrig and Silvana Gomez Juarez were kind of the lower level people in the division, and Demopoulos and Belbitsa, I mean, it's not like they're top contenders either. She's beating decent strawweights at age 38, but she's still taking on strawweights that either, and I think I said this when she fought Belbitsa, that Belbitsa might be the best fighter that was going to be this straightforward a style matchup for Kowalkiewicz, because Belbitsa wanted to have the exact same kind of fight. And then Demopoulos didn't, but Demopoulos is so tiny that she couldn't really force Kowalkiewicz out of that comfort zone.
And she's not good.
And yeah, she's not. I mean, it might be different if she were younger and the UFC had an atomweight division. Who knows? But yeah, she's not a good strawweight at this level. But all of that ends with Lucindo. Like Lucindo's, even if Kowalkiewicz manages to turn this into a striking battle, Lucindo is so much younger. She's faster. She's bigger. I mean, again, I don't know who will be taller in the cage, but in terms of like walking around, weight and shape, Lucindo is just a bigger woman. She hits harder. She doesn't throw the pretty technical straight punches and kicks like Kowalkiewicz does, but I don't think it's going to matter, because Lucindo's going to be able to walk through those and land big punches on Kowalkiewicz. She might take her down. Lucindo's shown herself willing to sort of take the opportunistic takedown or take a hurt opponent down to really do work down there. I kind of expect that's what's going to happen, and I expect it's going to happen sooner rather than later in this fight. Give me Lucindo by first round TKO on the ground, and I think Kowalkiewicz is just going to look a little bit overwhelmed. I think this line is what it is for a reason.
Yeah, sorry. I was writing up a draft of Dev's spinoff of Check the Kick podcast is Check the Height podcast.
Check the Height podcast. I love it. I want to know who really is the tallest light heavyweight in the UFC. So he needs to go see, Johnny Walker. He can get Kennedy Zechukwu and Ryan Spann at the same time over at Fortis.
Yeah.
Like, please.
Karolina Kowalkiewicz. I mean, she's not a great athlete. She is technically sound though. She's a high volume striker that she looked really good lately. I mean, you mentioned the Mopos fight. She, just her volume in that fight just swarmed her. She got a nice jab, throws combination. She seems to be gaining power, which is really strange as she's at the age where, you think she's going to be fading. And she finally sitting on her punches and landing harder than she's ever really had in her career. I like her kicks. She's, we always think of her as an outfighter, and she definitely isn't striking, but she can close the distance and battle in the clinch. It's actually one of her best positions, wear down her opponents. I mean, she beat up Belbita there. She go back to like the Felice Herrig fight. She was beating her up in the clinch. She's got some mean, dirty boxing. She does really well at framing and then landing like short elbows and stuff inside. She'll hit some foot sweeps inside the clinch. She had been wrestling a lot more recently. I mean, we saw that against Felice Herrig. We saw it against Silvana Gomez Suarez. She's still a weaker defensive wrestler, but she has a little bit of a submission. I mean, she's sub Felice Herrig. She's got 2 subs on her career, though she was subbed by Jessica May. It's been a while ago, but still something to watch for. Lucindo's only 22. And I've said this before, and I continue to think it's a good comparison. She reminds me of Claudia Gadelha, the way she fights. She's a tight boxer. She likes to battle in the pocket. She attacks with combination. She throws mean hooks. She's got good power. She's not even in power years yet. She's already has 8 TKOs. Now she'll toss out some meaningless spinning attacks and stuff, which I don't like. She's super durable. Like she ate a lot of shots. Like I go to that Herrig fight where Jasmine Herrig hit her with a lot of shots, and she just kept coming and using that pressure. She likes to also get in clinch, but she uses it differently. She likes to wear an opponent and just grind with her strength. She's a strong wrestler. Good top control. She's a good grappler. I mean, she hung on the ground with Polyana Viana, advanced position on the ground, landed mean ground and pound. She's got 3 subs. I mean, she's sub Polyana Viana, which I think is pretty impressive. And though she has been sub twice herself. So I'm surprised that the line is this big because Kowalkiewicz can be tricky and crafty, and she's on a nice little streak. I do think there's a little bit of smoke and mirrors going on, like you said, where, a lot has to do with who she's facing. Lucindo clearly has the more upside. If you told me, someone makes the top 5 in the next 2 years, then definitely Lucindo.
Yeah.
But like I said, Kowalkiewicz is crafty, and there's always that, like, at 22, guy could have that, like, upset too early in your fight, you're not experienced enough moment. I think both fighters have moments, but I'm going to go with the youth movement. I think the fight might be closer than the paper, indicates and the odds indicate. But I like she's got the more power in her hands. I like that she has takedowns. I think she'll go to her takedowns. Give me Lucindo by decision.
The top prelim at UFC 301 is a featherweight matchup between Jack Shore and Joanderson Brito. Shore, the 29-year-old Welshman, is 17-1 overall. He is 6-1 in the UFC. Since joining as the outgoing Cage Warriors bantamweight champ, he joined the UFC as a bantamweight. He moved up to featherweight for his last outing after his first career loss at the hands of Ricky Simon. He came back last year at UFC 286 in March and won his featherweight debut, tapping out Makwan Amirkhani late in the second round. So he'll look to make it 2 in a row at featherweight, establish himself as a rising contender in that division, the same way he was at 135. To do so, he will have to get past Brito. 29-year-old Brazilian is 16-3-1 overall. He is 4-1 since joining the UFC out of season 5 of Dana White's Contender Series. He dropped his UFC debut to Bill Algeo back in 2022. Since then, he's won 4 straight over Andre Fili, Lucas Alexander, Weston Wilson, and Jonathan Pierce. The most recent of those, the Pierce fight, was at the Allen versus Craig fight nights last November. So he's looking to make it 5 in a row and certify himself maybe a top 10 featherweight at the expense of Shore. He is slightly favored to do so. Brito minus 165, Shore plus 130 or plus 135 as your slight underdog. You and I, Keith, both liked Jack Shore a lot. I think I speak for both of us in that we liked Jack Shore as a prospect. I wasn't jumping completely off the bandwagon when he lost to Ricky Simon. Like, Simon was, I thought, specifically a bad matchup for Shore, since Shore's severely underrated wrestling, I think, might be his best single tool. But he decided that for whatever reason, he physically felt best at 145 and he's moving up. Tell me if you believe in him at all as an up-and-comer at 145, and who do you think wins on Saturday?
Yeah, I know, I don't mind, guys moving up. I've really liked that, especially as guys age and they get older. I've always liked Jack Shore. Again, I'm with you on the Ricky Simon fight. Marconera Marcani, take that what it's worth at this point in his career. It was a nice bounce back victory, but I don't think there's anything to take from that fight as it is. That's a fight he should have won and took care of business. This is a lot tougher. I mean, Joanderson Brito's good. So, sure, he's not a great athlete, but he's super intelligent. He knows what he's good at and just goes to it. He's, I think he'll be, fine for the weight class. This is his first fight. It's not a second fight, right?
It's his second. He fought Marcani at 145.
Yeah. And he's not undersized. He's a pressure striker. Sometimes the divisions blend together. So he's a pressure striker. Nice jab. He attacks with good variety, which kind of keeps you guessing. He cuts angles well on his attacks. I love that he works the body well. Good calf kicks. I mean, he showed some good power against Timur Valiev. His kicking game is very dangerous. Goes to the body, goes to the calves. His kicking game was on point against Marcani in that fight. He's a really good wrestler. Nice penetration stabs, chains attacks together well, relentless to get the fight to the ground. He uses, he gets in the clinch, he'll look for body locks and kind of uses strength in there. He's good at winning scrambles. He has a little bit of this like Dagestan thing going on where he'll grab a single limb and hold him down and keep him pinned down and slowly work, not rush. He's got good back take. He's got 8 subs. If he's put on his back, he can be a little too confident that way. He looked really bad against Ricky Simon, but I really think that was fluky. Like, I think not that Simon beat him, because Simone's good, but he looked flat. It just never seemed like to be able to get out of gear in that fight. Again, I think that's a little fluky. Brito's well-rounded. This is the guy that I liked him coming in, and he's looked better and better each fight. He's a very aggressive striker, presses the action towards his foe, works behind a good jab, follows up with really explosive shots, throws mean winging hooks. He can be wild, but he has massive power. I mean, he hits hard. He'll throw out some fun spinning attacks. Good kicking game, especially to the calves. He's a solid wrestler. He's extremely strong. Go back to the Lucas Almeida fight. He was tossing him around. If he gets on top, good top control. Good overall grab. I mean, he's a serious submission. He's got 6 subs on the record. He's a really fast guillotine. He caught Jonathan Pierce with this ninja choke, which was fast. He showed great submission defense and ability to escape in his fight against Diego Lopes. I like both these guys a lot. I think Shore is more technically sound fighter, but Brito is more explosive athlete. If one guy runs through the other guy or gets a quick finish, it's going to be Brito. I think he wins the first, but I'm gonna stay believing in Shore. I think Shore might press the action. I haven't seen Brito slow down yet, but can he fight at a pace where Shore's going for takedowns, grappling more? I think both guys have their moments, but I think Shore's wrestling is going to win the later rounds, the second, third, win a very close contest. Give me Shore by split decision.
This is, I don't know how many on this card so far, but this is another fight where I'm going the opposite way of you, and I already know that you're right. I had not, like I said, I had not jumped ship from Shore even at 135, but if a fighter decides
Shore. That joke, sorry.
That was outstanding. But if a fighter is just unprompted without missing weight, just saying, okay, I physically feel better at the higher weight class. I think I perform better there. I'll be the first one to step out of the way and say, go and do it. And I agree with you that the Simone fight felt a little fluky. And I don't know if he and Simone fought 10 times, who would win 5 out of 10 or 6 or 8 out of 10, but I don't think it looked like that every time. Simone just, he's not as good a fighter as Merab Dvalishvili, but he's the only other guy in that division that really puts on as furious a pace. And if you can't keep up with it, it does sort of leave you in the dust. And Short kind of got left in the dust, even though I would have said going into that fight that that's the kind of fight that Shore was made to kind of weather the storm against Simone and win late. But here moving up, I agree that we didn't learn too much from the Amirkhani fight, except maybe that the last thing Amirkhani was any decent at was grappling, and Shore handled him easily there as well. Like for what it's worth.
Getting women.
Well, I understand that he's a Mount Rushmore type for that. So yeah,
good for him.
He probably will pull ahead late, not because Brito gassed out horribly, but just because Shore was a relentless pace guy and a bit of a builder, even at 135, and that should stay the same. But Brito hits so hard, and Shore has gotten caught. I don't know if Brito knocks him out. That would be a lot to ask, but I could see Brito doing enough damage that he wins the first round, maybe wins the first and second by just landing bigger shots on Shore, or hits him hard enough early that the fight kind of pivots on that and Brito ends up holding on for the win. Again, not a lot of confidence in this. The line is as close as it is for a reason, but give me Brito to pull out the decision here in a fight that doesn't really make either guy look bad. The 5-fight main card of UFC 301 begins with a middleweight matchup between Paul Craig and Caio Borralho. Craig, the 36-year-old Scot, is 17-7-1 overall. He is 9-7-1 in the UFC. He's 1-1 since dropping the middleweight. He conducted the first part of his UFC run at light heavyweight, where he did not appear undersized, but after back-to-back losses to Volkan Oezdemir and Johnny Walker, he dropped in weight, and he has a win over Andre Muniz and a loss to Brendan Allen as he faces Borralho. 31-year-old Brazilian is 15-1 with 1 no contest overall. He's an even perfect 5-0 since joining the UFC as a 2-time veteran of Dana White's Contender Series. He fought twice on season 5, like 3 weeks apart, won them both easily, and since then he's been in the UFC. He fought twice last year, choked out Michal Oleksiejczuk in April, then came back at UFC São Paulo in November and took a unanimous decision over Abus Magomedov. So he's looking to make it 6 in a row, possibly fight for a title maybe sometime late this year, depending on how things shake out. He is overwhelmingly favored to do so. Borralho is minus 450, Craig plus 350 on the comeback. I say this anytime we get a fight like this. Well, if there's a greater than 4-1 favorite, what does it look like if the upset happens? Well, it doesn't take much thinking to get there with Paul Craig. We know exactly what it's going to look like if he pulls off the massive upset. He's going to get his ass kind of whooped for somewhere between 1 and 2.5 rounds before he catches his opponent in a moment of inattention and probably triangles them. I didn't see any point in him dropping to 185 pounds because he was a guy for me that the stars were going to have to align in some truly unforeseen way for him to make it to a title shot at 205. He was going to be physically overmatched against just about everybody. I didn't see anything wrong with Paul Craig that was going to be fixed by dropping 20 pounds. And for the most part, I've been right. I mean, he looked great beating Andre Muniz. He was not favored in that fight. And he was beaten pretty soundly by Brendan Allen. He was and he was a massive underdog in that fight. That's just what this is going to look like. Now he's taking on Borralho, who is probably ranked. I mean, he's definitely ranked behind where Allen was, probably right around the same that Muniz was when they fought almost a year ago. And he's another massive underdog. And here's a fight where the Paul Craig route to victory, you never say never, because he should not have beaten Magomed Ankalaev the way he did. But Borralho would have to make an all-timer of a mistake in order for Craig to beat him. I'm a little higher on Craig striking than you are, and I still don't think Craig striking is good. At 205, he was really slow, and everything was telegraphed. He's even slower by comparison to 185 pounders. He still doesn't have a ton of power. He still has just no ability to dictate distance for a guy who is taller and rangier than most of his opponents. Borralho is going to be so much faster and have so much more power. Borralho would be well served to just keep things on the feet, sprawl and brawl, and just knock Craig out. Just give Craig a lot of stuff he doesn't like until Craig starts going for desperation takedowns and then really light him up. If Borralho is smart, if his coaches over at the Fighting Nerds are earning their pay, that's what he should do. The worst thing Borralho could do would be to initiate the ground game against Craig, because again, landing on top is not even an advantage there. Craig's best moments in the UFC have been submission offense off his back. But even if he does that, even if he does the worst possible thing and just takes down Craig early while they're both fresh, both unhurt, both dry, I still think he smashes Craig. I'm not ruling it out entirely, but this is a terrible style matchup for Paul Craig. Borralho is a huge favorite for a reason. Give me Borralho by second round TKO, and I'm going to say it probably starts on the feet and ends on the ground. Maybe Craig is going for some kind of Hail Mary, and it's just not going to work. Borralho, too fast, too strong, despite being the visibly smaller guy, too well-rounded, and he's just not going to make the mistake. Borralho overwhelms, second round TKO.
Yeah, this dude, Paul Craig. Yeah, you're much higher on Paul Craig strike than I am. He's a really big dude. Like I don't see the advantage of him going down to middleweight. I mean, I know it's not his first fight. He's been down there for a while now, but I actually think he's probably better off at light heavyweight. But he's such a bad athlete. I think his striking is his boxing, I should say, not his overall striking, but boxing is horrendous. Like, I've called him a male Mackenzie Dern. If somehow Dern was half the grappler she was, I mean, his technique is really bad. He has no power. I go back to like the Ostermeyer fight where he just completely abandoned his striking and was just trying to pull guard the whole time. I like his kicks. He throws kicks well, though he doesn't set them up so he's open to be blasted. But I mean, like, it's an offensive tool, I should at least say. His striking defense, the chin is high in the air. He's extremely hittable. I mean, he wants to get the fight to the ground, but the problem is he's not a wrestler. Like, he's one of these guys. He hopes to catch a kick or somehow trips a guy down. He'll pull guard. He'll Imanari roll. I mean, he pulled Ostermeyer right to the mount. Like, he'd rather be mounted than be striking at distance with someone. Now, he is a good submission artist, but I've said this before. It feels like Royce Gracie in UFC 1 days, where being on bottom's an advantage. It's not 1993 anymore. Now, he can get subs. I mean, we've seen him lose every minute of fight and then find a way to sub a guy. He's subbed guys that are much better. I mean, he's got subs over Jamal Hill, and Magomed Ankalaev.
Well, I mean, technically, he has a knockout of Hill because he broke his arm first and then punched him out. But yeah, right. But yeah. It started because he armbarred him from his back. Yeah.
I mean, if we were ranking the top 3, light heavyweights, he's beaten 2 of them.
Yep. Finished
2 of them. So the issue is he gets hit a lot and his durability is fading. Borralho is also a really big dude. He's long and lengthy. He's got these long arms. He's a southpaw who's well-rounded. He moves well. He marches down his foe. He can be very patient and set up his shots. I mean, he was set up his shots really good against Abus Magomedov. He's a slip and red striker. He's accurate. I love his straight left. He throws a lot of kicks. He'll throw like a flying kick. He also has defensive issues. He keeps his chin high in the air. He's a decent wrestler. He's a much better wrestler than Paul Craig. He looks like freaking Bo Bassett out there compared to Paul Craig. But I definitely would still call him more of a grappler than a wrestler. Smothering top game. Tends to inch in advance a little bit at a time. He's got some good back tanks. If he gets his hooks in, I've said this before, he's almost impossible to get out because he got those long legs. He doesn't rush submissions. Besides the fight against Makhman Muradov, but I think that's a little bit like an outlier than the rule. He is a submission threat. He's got mean ground and pound. Not the best defensive wrestler. He struggled, to stop takedowns from Muradov, which was surprising. Muradov looked for takedowns. But he showed he had good cardio. I mean, he was still going hard late in that fight. I'm with you. I think this is a horrendous stylistic matchup. I think Borralho's better everywhere. He's a better striker. He hits harder. He's a better wrestler. He's a better grappler. He's a better – well, I don't want to say he's a better grappler, but better topside grappler. He'll put himself in a better position in the grappling. He's much better athlete. I think Craig eats some really big shots coming in. I think he tires as the fight goes on. I think Borralho battles him with ground and pound, battles him on the feet. You went second round. That's what I originally was going to go. So I'll say late in the first round. I say he knocks him out. Give me Borralho by TKO.
We stay in the middleweight division for a clash between Michel Pereira and Ior Potieria. Pereira, the 30-year-old Brazilian, is 30-11 with 2 no contests overall. He is 8-2 in the UFC. He is on a 7-fight win streak. Worth noting that he is 2-0 at middleweight. He conducted the first portion of his UFC run as a ridiculously large and muscular welterweight. He moved up last year to 185 pounds, and thus far, he's looked great with first-round finishes, first minute finishes of Andre Petrosky last October and Michal Oleksiejczuk at UFC 299 in March. He wanted on this card, despite the fact that he fought just 6 or 7 weeks ago. He had been scheduled to take on Mahmoud Muradov. Muradov was forced off the card a week or two ago. So in steps Potieria. 27-year-old Ukrainian is 20-5 overall. He is 2-3 since joining the UFC out of season 5 of Dana White's Contender Series. He entered the UFC as a light heavyweight and attempted to move down to 185 pounds for his first appearance this year. Back in February, he took on Robert Brychek. He didn't quite make it, and the fight ended up being conducted at 188-pound catch weight. Here, despite the short notice, he believes he can make it all the way to 185. We will see how that goes. He is not favored to do much for himself once he makes it in there, however, as Pereira is, depending on where you look for your lines, possibly the biggest favorite on the card. He's minus 500, Potieria plus 380 or so. Keith, I feel as though we've said this about a few fights recently, but if you look at Michel Pereira and Ior Potieria on Friday at weigh-ins, and you tell somebody that doesn't follow the sport that one of these guys was a welterweight a year ago and the other guy was a light heavyweight a year ago, they're going to guess wrong.
Oh, absolutely.
The freaky thing about Michel Pereira is his game worked better than it should have, even at 170. He came to the UFC. He lost 2 of his first 3 fights, and he lost them in the stupidest way imaginable. Like against Tristan Connolly, he was taking on a former lightweight and just gassed himself out being a maniac for the first 7 minutes of the fight. And then against Diego Sanchez, another former lightweight, he was thrashing him and hit him with an illegal knee late in the 3rd round. So instead of winning a easy 30-27 decision over a big name, he ends up being Diego Sanchez's last career win. If you told me that that guy 4 years later would be on a 7-fight win streak and a potential middleweight title contender by the end of this year, I would have laughed at you. But the funny thing is, even before moving up to middleweight, this started to work better for him. He reined it in just a little bit. Like he still loves his capoeira stuff. He'll still throw a helicopter kick out there, but despite an obviously heavyweight cut, despite just being as muscular as he is and fighting at the frenetic pace he does, he has decent cardio. He won his win streak right now. I think it had 4 decisions in a row on it. So he was doing well enough to beat solid outside of contention guys like Nico Price and Santiago Ponzinibbio just in a kickboxing match. He unveiled a weapon that really his regional tape gave you no reason to believe. There was no reason to believe that this guy would be a good offensive wrestler. But he is. He doesn't have the best technique, but he has decent technique and the size, the strength. I mean, he's been doing cool wrestling. He's been taking people's back standing and launching them, which is a lot of fun. It's, I mean, not always the smartest thing.
Freestyle.
Yeah, nobody's really made him pay for it yet. And he's fought some guys where if his approach was gonna derail, these guys would have made him pay for it. Like Michal Oleksiejczuk is not a bad fighter, and Pereira ran right through him. Andre Petrosky's not a bad fighter, and he's a good wrestler, and he's a physical ox of a man, and Pereira ran right through him. I still don't have a handle on what Pereira's upside in this division is. Like, basically everyone he's fought is either great or terrible. So it's like, it's kind of the in-between thing. You know what I mean? Like, well, I know he's better than the ghost of Shogun Rua, and I know he's not as good as Carlos Ulberg or Rodolfo Bellato.
Yeah.
He's a good striker. The way he looked in terms of body composition at 205, maybe 185, once he gets it dialed in, is the best weight class for him, because he's not tiny, but you know, he looked like he had a little extra weight on him that could stand to come off. If his power carries over, he'll be a plus power guy at 185. But and not as diverse as Pereira, but he throws he has a pretty diverse striking arsenal. But here I see Pereira as a guy who has more ways to win this. If you look at Pereira's record, I mean, he has a good number of submissions on his record, but they're way, way early in his career. Hell, most of them are in promotions that are so small that I couldn't even find the tape on them. And the ones where I could, it was against really, really overmatched guys. That doesn't seem to have much bearing on the fighter he is right now. So I think Pereira will be the guy initiating the ground game, if anybody does. And I think if they just hang out on the feet, Pereira's probably going to catch him. He's going to probably catch him repeatedly with big shots. Pereira's he's going to be a lot faster. Strikes are going to be coming from angles that Pereira is not used to dealing with. It's rough for Pereira because he's probably better than his UFC record. But on top of everything else, for him, never having successfully made 185 pounds to try to do it on somewhat short notice here is just one more kind of weight in the scale that goes towards Pereira here, where if this thing is close, if it's competitive, if it gets past minute 8 or 9, Pereira is the guy with proven cardio for that third round, and Pereira on the tail end of that weight cut might not be. So I like Pereira in this one. I don't know if I like him minus 500 big, but I like him. I'm going to say he gets a third round TKO here. Pereira just worn down, the more tired guy, the guy that's taken more damage, and Pereira finally catches him with something nasty. Give me Pereira by third round KO.
Yeah. I mean, Pereira, you mentioned he's such a massive dude. I mean, the guy looks like a light heavyweight, which is crazy that he used to fight at welterweight. I mean, he's got those long arms. He's like an all-time great athlete. You know, the guy was. I still love that he was a like dance instructor in Japan. Yeah, he marches down his foe. He's very good at cutting off the cage. He sets up his shots really well with feints. He's so explosive. He's got fast hands. He's got crushing power. I mean, he looks great at middleweight. He showed good distance strikings against Imadaev. He uses his flying knee to both land shots offensively, but also defensively. He uses it to close the distance, but also stop opponent's attack if you're coming in. I love that he throws stepping knees, great kicks, oblique kicks, teep kicks. I mean, he crushed, absolutely folded Michel Olasechek in his last fight with a kick to the body. You mentioned his wrestling, very underrated wrestling. I mean, he beat Chaos Williams with his wrestling. He hasn't beat JJ Black Belt, though. I don't think much of him as a submission threat. That what we've seen. You said it, his cardio's gone a long way. Some of that has to do the way he fights now, but I also think, moving up to middleweight. I mean, Santiago Ponzinibbio was the fight that really kind of I stopped questioning his cardio, and I know that was at welterweight, but still, it's been a couple fights now where he's not, slowed down. But Pretorio, he's only 27. And he already has a lot of UFC experience. I like that. He showed improvement since joining the company. He was a guy that I wasn't that high on. He looks much better at middleweight than at light heavyweight. He looks like a big middleweight. He's a southpaw. He has a bladed taekwondo style. His hands are much faster than I originally thought. He attacks with combinations. Has a lot of variety in striking. He sets up his shots well with feints. He also does a lot of hand fighting. He will throw a lot of looping shots, but he has some pop. He does drop his hands, which is concerning. He keeps his chin high in the air. He showed intelligent, though. Like in his last fight when he was going against Bresky, he kept breaking up Bresky's rhythm by clinching. Like as soon as Bresky started getting going, he'd clinch him and break. It would just stop everything that Bresky was going. He never got to get, never got to fight at the pace he wanted, never got the rhythm he wanted. He can wrestle. He has 6 subs. He did gas. I think his cardio is a big question mark to me because he gassed against Nega Mariano and Bellotto, but his cardio looked way better against Bresky, so I'm not really sure there. I'd say Pretoria is a better fighter than I originally thought, but I still favor Michel Pereira there. I think Pereira is better than him everywhere. He's faster. He hits harder. I think Pereira hits too hard, and Pretoria still has too many defensive issues. I think Pereira starches him early. I think he lands one big shot. Could be a body kick. It could be something like that. Could be a flying knee. Could be a stepping knee to the body. Could be who knows. I just keep seeing him catch him with something. Give me Pereira to win by first round knockout.
Third from the top on the UFC 301 main card is a light heavyweight matchup between Anthony Smith and Vitor Petrino. Smith, the 35-year-old American, is 37-19 overall. He is 12-9 in the UFC. He is 8-6 at light heavyweight. He has fought as low as 170 pounds. He's had his best success at 205, including making it all the way to a title shot against then champ John Jones almost exactly 5 years ago at UFC 235. He is coming in off of a loss. He got knocked out by Khalil Roundtree in the 3rd round at UFC Fight Night, Song versus Gutierrez last December. He will look to get back in the win column here against Petrino. 26-year-old Brazilian is a perfect 11-0 as a pro. He's a perfect 4-0 since joining the UFC out of season 6 of Dana White's Contender Series. He fought 3 times last year, winning them all, and has already fought once this year. He took a unanimous decision over Tyson Pedro at UFC Fight Night, Rosenstrike versus Gaziev back in early March. He'll look to make it 5 in a row in the UFC, 12-0 as a pro. He is strongly favored to do so. Petrino is minus 450, Smith plus 350 on the comeback. I tell you, I said out of the intro that this card is pretty well constructed to let the Brazilians shine, to let the crowd in Rio have something to cheer about. I mean, here, Smith is a guy with good name value for an up-and-coming 205-pounder. He has fought everybody. He's beaten more than his share of them.
He fought for the title.
He fought for the title. And if he was a dick, he might have been champ for a minute.
Yeah.
He's not. He's Anthony Smith. He's awesome. And here, without looking, he might be as big an underdog to Smith as he was to John Jones.
I just loved it. I'm glad you said that. He was plus 485 against Jones, but pretty much the same line.
Same. So in the same general neighborhood, because here's the thing. Smith, since moving up to 205 pounds, who's he lost to? John Jones, champ, Glover Teixeira, champ. Alexander Rakic, top 5. Magomed Ankalaev, top 5. His last 2 losses to Johnny Walker and Khalil Roundtree, they're at least top 10 guys. And Roundtree is about to be in what might be a title eliminator in his next fight against Jamal Hill. Bad guys don't beat Anthony Smith. And he's beaten some good guys in between those losses. The line on this fight, and obviously the bookmaker set the lines according to what they're getting from the bettors. There is some public faith that Vitor Petrino is the real deal. Either that, or there's some amount of belief that after being Anthony Smith for this many years, maybe the end is finally approaching. Because Smith has been an incredibly blood and guts guy for well over a decade now. I mean, Petrino should overwhelm Smith. He's a huge 205-pounder. He's an incredible athlete. He has monstrous power. He is a lot better versed on the ground than you would think from looking at his knockout versus submission totals. He is a good wrestler and a good grappler. He is still just 26 years old. But Smith, even now, he's still kind of the ultimate trap fight. He's handled a couple people that should be capable of running him over, even in the last 2 or 3 years. I'm not picking it here. Smith has taken so much damage in his wins as well as his losses over the last 5 years. His best chance here would be for Petrino to blunder into a bad situation on the ground. Smith is a venomous grappler who's always looking for offense, even when he's dealing with a grappler who's more physically strong than him and is kind of throwing him around. But I just don't see that happening against Petrino. If this goes to the ground at any point, it's going to be either because Petrino took it there with a massive slam where he landed inside control or something, or it's going to go to the ground because Smith is already really badly hurt. And there'll be less worry about blundering into a triangle or getting his back taken. I think Petrino probably blasts Smith here. And we've printed a couple of Vitor Petrino interviews recently. Our Portuguese-speaking correspondent, Christian Stein, has talked to him, I think probably before all of his UFC fights at this point. He is a guy who's very hesitant to call out the champ after every single win. Like, he's laid out kind of his middle to long-term game plan. He's like, this year I want to get a top 10 win, then a top 5 win, then a title eliminator. He's a guy that would love to be in the title picture by the end of the year. But regardless of whether that happens, if that happens, what he does to Smith on Saturday is going to form a big part of the sizzle reel, I think. I think we're going to see him doing some stuff to Anthony Smith that only championship level fighters have done. And I think Vitor Petrino is one of those guys, and he's running into Smith at the right time. You've used the metaphor many times of one escalator going up and one coming down. There are some times when Smith would have just been too tough, too wily, too durable, and might have victimized Petrino even after getting his ass kicked for a while. But I think those elevators have already passed. Give me Petrino to just blast Smith. Because it's Anthony Smith, I think it still makes it at least to the second round. But I think moments of effective offense for Smith are going to be few and far between. Give me Petrino by second round TKO.
You said it give me flashbacks when you're talking about escalators. I keep thinking about getting lost in the King of Prussia Mall. Anthony Smith. I like this guy. I mean, sure. He just seems like a really good dude. He's not a good athlete, but he's the ultimate experienced guy. I mean, he's seen everything in the sport. He's a technical striker at this point. He likes to press the action, but his volume has really faded. Seems like his body has faded. He still throws some tight shots, and he'll attack with combinations, and he's got a lot of variety in his attacks. But at this point, he lacks power. He was never a big power puncher to begin with, but it seems like his power is gone. He has a big kicking game. He'll mix kicks into his combos. He'll throw some keep kicks, but he has a lot of defensive issues. He's slowed down. He's hittable. He's taking God knows how much. Think about all the damage he took even before he came into the UFC, and then he's faced friggin' murderer's row of guys since he's been in there. I mean, Rakic crushed his legs with kicks, so he's open to leg kicks. He can sneak in a takedown, and he's a pretty decent grappler. He's a submission threat. He's got 15 subs on his record, but he's not, so David Meyer on the ground or something like that. So my biggest issue is just his durability. I just don't trust it anymore. I think his chin is gone. He's taken so much damage. I mean, go back, think about some of the fights he's been in, and think about the damage from Glover Teixeira, and there was another fight that he was Glover Teixeira the one that he took the worst damage? One of them he was.
Well, yeah, Glover Teixeira was like that early COVID era one where you could hear them talking to each other, and Smith lost a couple teeth. Yeah,
that's when he was losing his teeth. Yes, it was Glover Teixeira losing his teeth.
He came back 4 months later, and Alessandro Rakic sawed both his legs off for him. Thiago Santos mauled him. Ankalaev mauled him. Yeah.
Even the last one, the way he got knocked out by Claire Roundtree, it's very concerning. Petrino's a very explosive athlete. He's fast. He really sits on his shots. He throws a lot of hard power shots, straight, tight hooks. I mean, he starts Modestas Bukakas with one shot. I like the way he works the body. I like the way he looks for elbows when he gets inside the pocket. He looks in for stepping knees. He's got a quick high kick. Now, he has been rocked sometimes. But he since then, I've seen him recently move his head a lot more, making it a little harder to hit. He's a solid wrestler. He can shoot on the hips, pick you up, slam you. Good top game. Isn't a big, submission threat, but he did sub Marcin Prachnio. I was impressed by his fight against Bellato when he gave up his back and had Bellato's a good grappler, had his back at long periods of time, and he didn't get submitted. His gas tank is question mark to me, because it looked good against Marcin Prachnio, but it slowed down against Anton Jakali, and even Tyson Pedro in a fight that I thought was shouldn't have been as close as it was. I mean, it wasn't a close fight, but I expected him just to steamroll him. Smith has a real shot in this fight if he can slow down the fight. He can weather an early storm, be crafty, be gritty, come from behind, especially if Petrino gasses, if that's still an issue. I don't trust Smith's durability at this moment. And Petrino hits hard. I think Petrino blasts him. I'm with you because Smith is too tough for his own good. I think he makes it past the first. I'm with you. I say it happens in second. Give me Petrino by second round TKO. And you know what? This might be the last we see of Anthony Smith. I think he might just transition to, commentator, maybe starts working Dana White compared to serious stuff. He's got a good personality. I think he's better in that role.
He's good at the desk. Like,
he's good.
Yeah. On any play-by-play, but when he's just at the analyst desk sitting with Rashad or whoever.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's good. And he's doing his podcasting. He's got other avenues. He doesn't need to get punched in the face anymore.
Speaking of people who presumably did not need to get punched in the face anymore, the co-main event of UFC 301 features the return of all-time great Jose Aldo as he takes on Jonathan Martinez. Martinez, 30-year-old Texan by way of Denver, 19-4 overall, 10-3 in the UFC. He's on a 6-fight win streak, including a couple of TKOs that have showcased some of the nastiest leg kicks in the entire game. He fought twice last year, taking a unanimous decision over Said Nurmagomedov in March, then coming back in October and finishing off Adrian Yanez with some of those leg kicks at Fight Night Yusuf versus Barbosa. Martinez, after a pretty low-key early run in the UFC, is creeping into the outskirts of the title picture in arguably the hardest division in the entire promotion to do so. And he's going to get a chance to put an incomparable name on his resume, an incomparable scalp on his shelf in the form of former featherweight great Aldo. The 37-year-old Brazilian is 31-8 overall. He is 13-7 in the UFC. He's 3-3 since moving down to bantamweight. He was 10-4 in the UFC, 18-4 if you count his run in WEC, which you should, as he made himself the greatest featherweight we had ever seen up to that point, somebody who's still in the discussion even now. But after he lost his title and did not see a great way back to it, he dropped to 135 pounds, where he found a surprising amount of success, going 3-3 over the last couple of years. He retired in August of 2022 after a one-sided decision loss to Merab Dvalishvili, and sort of out of nowhere a couple months ago said he was coming back to fight at UFC Rio. Here he is in the co-main event, and believe it or not, he's the underdog. Aldo plus 130, Martinez is minus 160 as your favorite.
For some reason I thought that read wrong in my head, like Aldo was the freaking favorite.
Yes.
I was gonna run to like the casino and make a bet. I don't do that, but anyways.
Here's the thing. Martinez is 30. So, he's has the feel of a prospect or a rising first-time contender, but it's not like he's 15 years younger than Aldo. But in terms of the evolution of the sport, it feels like he's 2 full generations newer than Aldo. And in some ways, he is the heir to some of the ways that Jose Aldo changed the game.
Sure.
Jose Aldo is the father of the modern leg kick. Not talking about the low calf kick that goes in and out of favor, but just in terms of winding up Muay Thai style and just putting a dent in another man's thigh. Jose Aldo was the gold standard for that in the 2000s.
Yeah, I don't know if I wouldn't say he like started it.
No.
But
because he got it from like Marco Huis and
Pedro Hizzo. I always think of Pedro Hizzo, but he like perfected it.
He perfected it and made it work at those lower weights.
Yeah.
Like he was the first guy to really take out top level fighters with leg kicks south of 170 pounds. Martinez, it's a crowded metal platform, but he's probably in the picture for some of the nastiest leg kicks in the UFC right now.
Yeah. Yeah. He's a great leg kicker.
Yeah. He's a great leg kicker. He has turned into so much better than we thought he would be. It's, what is it now? 5.5 years that he made his short notice debut against Southern New England's finest, Andre Sukumtat, dropped a decision. And I was like, this dude from the middle of nowhere in East Texas is going to fight 3 times, lose all 3 and be gone.
Yeah.
And now he's a top 10 fighter.
Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, even going back to like his knockout loss to Davey Grant, the run he's been on since then has been so impressive.
That's the thing, because he's beaten good fighters and all kinds of different fighters, people that we thought were good style matchups for him, people that we thought were bad style matchups. The Said Nurmagomedov win is probably the best looking one in hindsight, just because of how good a fighter he beat, the kind of style matchup it was for him. Yeah, he's starting to look more and more like a man of destiny here, despite what the little height and weight say on our, the little cards you're reading under our faces right now. I think Martinez is going to be visibly the larger guy of the two in the cage. Even if the tail of the tape both says they're both 5'7" and 135 pounds, Martinez is going to seem like the bigger guy. He's definitely younger and fresher. I mean, he's pretty much dead in his prime right now. And I mean, Jose Aldo is one of my favorite fighters of all time. And at least as of 18 months ago, he could compete against top 10 through 20 bantamweights. Marlon Vera, Pedro Munoz, Rob Font, those were the guys he beat at bantamweight. None of them were right in the swing of title contention, but they were all top 10-ish guys when he beat them. He got overwhelmed by Merab. If he's still the guy that beat Munoz and Font, this could be a great fight. But those fights were 3 years ago. He had a bad loss in between and then just a bunch of time off. I don't know how active he's been in that time off. I don't know what kind of shape he stayed in. if the best possible 37-year-old Jose Aldo comes out, I still favor Martinez. And that's even with Martinez being a pretty good style matchup for him, because Jonathan Martinez is going to go out and want to have a kickboxing match with him. I just have the feeling that Martinez is going to be a little faster, a little bigger, a little more powerful, a little more resilient if it comes to it and it gets deeper into the fight. I think Martinez might out leg kick him. He might show him, hey, this is what the best leg kicks in the game look like in 2024. Yeah, I don't foresee many happy outcomes for Aldo here. I don't think we're going to have a King of Rio moment where he thrashes Chad Mendes, jumps over, and crowd surfs on 35,000 people, and it's one of the most indelible moments in UFC history. Give me Martinez to just beat Aldo to the punch, beat him to the kick, beat up his legs, on his way to a pretty one-sided decision here. Give me Martinez probably to just win all 3 rounds and kind of chomp Aldo up pretty bad.
Yeah. So you never trust MMA retirements, but the return of Jose Aldo, that's not one I expected to see.
Hell no.
Yeah, I mean, I like that Jose Aldo won the title after losing to Conor McGregor. Like that he still had moments, like he won the title again. He ended up getting beat up by Max Holloway, but then he had a nice little run at 135, won some matches and everything. But he was never the same fighter than. And I'm not. This is not a pro Conor. I mean, kind of. I'm not an anti Conor guy, but I feel bad for the people who come in. Since Conor, because Conor brought in such a different fan base and so many people, and I mean, it is what it is. And I know, and this is not a like newbie. I'm you know me. I don't. Everyone comes in at a certain time. The more the merrier. The more the merrier. Like I'm not that guy. And I know there's tons of people who have gone back through the history. There's a lot of people that are extremely knowledgeable MMA people who came in from Conor and went back and learned the history, and good for them. I feel bad for the people who become MMA fans and they didn't get to experience the prime Jose Aldo through WEC, through the beginning of the UFC, and just how vicious, savage, explosive, fast this dude was. I really don't have favorites. Like there's 2 or 3 guys I'd say like I really like this guy, but I just have such an appreciation for the sport that, I mean, how could you not love Jose Aldo? Yeah. That said, he's 2 years older. Like, I don't expect him to get better at 37 years old.
It's already so crazy that he had as much success as he did dropping to 135 at like age 33. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Now, there's an argument maybe the time off lets him heal his body. And then I know he's done some boxing and he's been active, but, maybe the heals up. I still not buying that. Now, USADA being gone might help his career somehow. Take that for what it's worth.
Sure.
He's still a big bantamweight, he's a pressure counter striker. He's, and of course I'm going by 2 years ago, so I'm assuming that it's still there. He was a good boxer, worked by a Chris Jab, tight boxing. More of a history note, but he's probably the best mid-range striker in MMA history. He can be gun shy at times. I go back to like the Volkanovski loss. He was gun shy in that fight. His straight right is his best blow. The body work he started late in his career was something impressive. Jeremy Stevens, Renato Moicano, both got hurt bad by body shots. I love that he throws kicks. He throws kicks to set up punching combinations, which is so different. Usually people throw punches and they end with kicks. He'll throw a kick and then follow with punching combinations. It's so backwards. Hard kicks to the body. He has power. I mean, that's the thing that lasts fading. Like if he's getting pieced up by Martinez and then he hurts him with a big shot or something, that would not really surprise me. he really abandoned his leg kicks late in his career. In credit against Dione, he threw it a lot more again, but it was like one fight in this late surge. I still question his chin and his time, and not even just his chin, but just that's the speed. You lose speed at all. The shot that used to miss or the shot that rolled off the shoulder now lands. So it's not necessarily that the chin is gone, but it's like that timing. You know, he got one punch knocked out by Conor McGregor. He had the 2 beatings against Max Holloway. I think about like the war against Chad Mendes, getting beat up by Alex Volkanovski, and ground and pound by Yan. His last fight against Marab, just working him, and you know that all adds up. And again, 2 years old, I don't expect it to be better. Jonathan Martinez, you know, southpaw, really good striker, technically sound, likes to work the body, good pop in his hands. I like that he just kind of pops on the outside and just works, but he still has some underrated power. He's got fast hands, it's accurate, works behind a good jab. He likes to rip the body. He presses forward, and when he gets a person backing up, he'll change it up and throw like step in knees. Some of the you mentioned it, some of the meanest calf kicks in the game. He has a good teep kick. He'll toss up a bunch of high kicks to kind of keep his opponents honest there. I like that he cuts angles to really set up his inside kicks. He'll throw kicks in his, you know, opposite of Aldo. He'll throw hands and then finish with kicking combinations. He also throw in like a flying knee. Isn't much of an offensive wrestler and really isn't much of a grappler altogether. But I liked how well he did in the clinch against Saeed Nurmagomedov. He did really well there. He isn't a wrestler, and I'd say he's still a weaker defensive wrestler, though that's not an area where I expect Aldo to try to look, especially this late in his career. It would be nice to have that, you know, the King of Rio going back to Rio one last time, you know, up and coming. I know you said Martinez is like 30, so we shouldn't really count him as an up and comer. It still feels that way. You know, new kid on the block. He you know, the guy who's supposed to beat him, and you know, he's a big. What would you say? What would you say he was? How much of? No, actually, he wasn't that big of an underdog, right?
He's not a huge favorite. Minus 160. Aldo around plus 130.
That's a lot of respect for Aldo. Like I'm surprised. I expected that line to be much, much bigger. And I guess like you could argue that this is still, you know, the Aldo that left, this would still be a step up in competition for Martinez. You know, if he is the Aldo that left. I can't see Aldo winning this fight. Like if he wins, it'll be that Robbie Lawler one last time, what a moment. You know, put it in Rio, even better. And again, I really don't root for who wins. And I've said this a million times. I don't root for my picks. I really don't. Like, I do this for fun. I just do this because I love the sport, man. Like, I love talking about fights. I love going deep onto fights. I root for the story. What would be the funnest story to talk about? And I mean, what would be greater than Jose Aldo one last time? We can kind of have and what I would love is he win and then retire instantly and like really retire and just have this moment that he'll always be remembered like that. Like think about Robbie Lawler's career, how it's viewed now with that one last moment than it would have been if Nico Price knocked him out like a lot of people expected. It
absolutely
changes your perspective on them. Not shouldn't, but if he had that moment, oh my God, it'd be the highlight of the night. It'd be the highlight of his not his career, but like one of the highlights of his career.
But it changed. You put it right that it changes the way we talk about it, and in not just wins and losses on paper, but it changes the narrative because you remember afterwards he had a little moment. He had a post-fight interview where he actually got emotional, and we're talking about Robbie Lawler, one of the most guarded high-level fighters ever. Like, I think I asked you this I think I asked you this on the recap that night. Like, is there an English-speaking fighter that we know less personally
at that level,
similar accomplishment?
Yeah, that level. Yeah,
probably not.
No, and the guy was in the sport for 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, he was never really in the headlines for getting in trouble with the law.
No,
I know from TJ DeSantis that he's a huge fan of Iowa Hawkeyes football. Like that's about the only thing outside of his fighting accomplishments. Yeah.
Which is so weird because you think Iowa should be Iowa wrestling. Iowa's never been. I mean, they don't have a bad football program, but it's not USC, Alabama, the ones that win the championships. Unfortunately, we can hand pick these moments, these really nice ones. And if this isn't a movie, this isn't a Disney movie. So there's so few. This sport isn't like that. Majority of the stars get that. Frankie Edgar getting kicked his face in, Randy Couture, name the list, Donald Cerrone, like all the way the big legendary guys lose. Sure. Fedor getting one punch by Ryan Bader, list goes on and on and on. Martinez is younger. He's faster. I think he has more weapons. I see him just absolutely battering Aldo for 15 minutes. I see tons of leg kicks, which would be kind of ironic that Jose Aldo be the one getting his legs chopped up. I think it's just going to be a really sad moment to see this legendary guy, but I think he just gets butchered for 15 minutes. Give me Martinez in a blowout.
That brings us to the main event of UFC 301. A men's flyweight title fight between your defending champ, Alexandre Pantoja, and the challenger, Steve Erceg. Pantoja, the 34-year-old Brazilian, is 27-5 overall. He's 11-3 in the UFC, and he is on a 5-fight win streak. He fought twice last year, winning the title at UFC 290 in a split decision against Brandon Moreno, then defending it at UFC 296 in December with another decision win, this time over Brandon Royval. He will attempt to make his second title defense here against Erceg, the Australian who has taken the division by storm, making his way all the way into the title picture really in less than a calendar year. 28-year-old Australian is 12-1 overall. He's 3-0 in the UFC. He made his debut last June at UFC 289, beat David Dvorak, and that was him stepping up on short notice. He came back in November at UFC 295, beat Alessandro Costa, and has already fought once this year. That was at UFC Fight Night Rosenstrike versus Gaziev, where he knocked out Matt Schnell in the second round. Due to some fighters not being available, due to Pantoja having been around for a million years and already fought most of the other top contenders, Erceg got his name called, and he is fighting for a UFC title in just his fourth fight. While he is not favored to get it done, it's not the widest line on the card by a stretch. Pantoja is minus 220, Erceg plus 180. Keith, I'm going to flip this one to you first, but I cannot remember in the modern era, no matter how you want to define modern era, a fighter who came out of nowhere to fight for a title quicker than Steve Erceg. And I'm not talking just about number of fights, or on paper accomplishments, because, we'll go to Alex Pereira, we'll go to Brock Lesnar, but
yeah, not counting the anomalies like Brock Lesnar and Ronda Rousey but like guy who like winning no name guy to title shot. And
in the other cases, there are obvious reasons why. They're already famous for something else. They have history with the champ. In every case, it was an extremely depleted division to start with, so when there weren't six people throwing their hands up. Here with Erceg, there's the problem that Figueiredo, Moreno, and Pantoja have fought each other and all the other top contenders a million times. But really, this is as shocking as it gets, because in about 9 months' time, Erceg went from the onus being on him to even prove he belonged in the UFC to fighting for a title. And while it may not be the sexiest matchup, it's not like he is undeserving. Nobody's complaining that he doesn't deserve to be here. They're just kind of like, wow, that was quick.
And would you argue that he's I don't know who you got to pick, but would you argue he's at least as much of a threat to win the title as anybody else that maybe deserves it? I mean, maybe there's maybe one or two guys who you think would, if you were setting the record at, 50% chance of being Pantoja, but most of them would be around the same, 40, whatever you put Erceg at. Like, it's not like, oh, this guy has no chance.
No, I absolutely agree. And I don't think there's anybody out there that would command a much closer line than Pantoja being around a 2-1 favorite, especially since Manel Kopp has decided to become the Yoel Romero of the division and just be kind of a weight missing goofball. Because obviously, no matter what the line is, Kopp can starch anybody.
I love him though. Yeah.
Oh, I love him too, but you're not banking your UFC 301 on him. Hell no. Tell me how you see this one playing out. And considering that Erceg is only 28 years old, even if you think he's going to lose on Saturday, kind of give me a general handicap on him staying in the title picture over the next couple of years. Like, is this going to be his high watermark, win or lose? Or is this came earlier than we expected, but this guy's going to be a big deal for the next 5 years?
Yeah, and I just want to throw some people out there because I know, like, the commentator, the comments in this, and like, people love correcting us.
Go for it.
Like, I love when people come in and they watch like a 3-hour breakdown and we have like one detail, like, oh, yeah, he's got 7 submissions. Like, what are you talking about? He has 8 submissions. He didn't count his last one. Oh, casual. We just talked about it for 3 hours. Do your research. Yeah. Oh my God. Sorry. I got one stat wrong in 3 hours. So yeah, we mentioned guys like Brock Lesnar and people like that getting the like Michael Chandler because of success in Bellator. Sure. I know someone mentioned Yuri Prohaska, another guy, big, huge free agent. Like, you're talking about
outgoing champs from a major regional or global promotions.
Yeah, we're not talking about those guys where they walked in and they were in a main event, their UFC debut or something. He's talking about the guy who entered as entry-level UFC talent. Like,
came out of nowhere is the word.
First prelim fights. I don't know where he was, but you get my point.
Yeah.
The only guy I can think of, and even this might be a little too high because he had like a spectacular highlight reel, but maybe Dominic Reyes. But he had like this spectacular highlight reel coming into the UFC. He had that big high kick on the LFA right beforehand. So maybe him. But again,
and he was coming into a division where the champ had cleaned it out so thoroughly.
But that's kind of what's going on with Pantoja. I mean, you have Mukayev, you have Albazi. Albazi's hurt. Mukayev, I think he might be hurt or something or whatever. It might be Ramadan or some kind of outside force. So yeah, a lot of it's timing. Now, who's going to win? I'm intrigued by this fight. I'm intrigued by flyweights. If this was a co-main event, like, I wouldn't be shitting on this pay-per-view. Like, this would be a good co-main event that I'd be excited about. I might even be saying, like, hey, guys, why ain't anybody talking about the co-main event? Because it's getting overshadowed by, insert whatever main event, Duplessis versus Adesanya. If that was the main event, no one would be talking about this fight. And I'd be like, hey, this is a really good fight. Pantoja after I just said I don't have favorites, Pantoja is one of my favorites to watch. He's well-rounded fighter, so underrated on the feet. Like, people always talk about his grappling, and rightfully so. He's a spectacular grappler, but he's so underrated on his feet. He really doesn't lose striking battles because he's so dominant on the ground that people think when there's moments on the feet that he's going to lose those, and he really doesn't. Like, he's at least competitive. Like, he's swinging it out with Brandon Moreno. He's doing well. Like, the Brandon Royval fight, like, people may seem like, oh, if they're on the feet, Brandon Royval has huge advantage, and he really didn't. Like, Pantoja at least hung with him on the feet. That's why I just want to say I think his striking is so underrated. He's a high volume striker. He's got fast hands. He loves to get down to the pocket and he will brawl it out. He'll throw, he'll eat a shot. And it's obviously playing with fire. One day I think it's going to burn him, but he'll get in the pocket. He'll stay in the pocket, land a shot of his own while eating a shot. He's got serious power. I mean, he knocked out Wilson Heiss. He knocked out Matt Schnell. He dropped Brandon Moreno. He hurt Brandon Royval in their fight. Like, he has pop, and he'll come out super wrestling. We saw what he did to Alex Perez, just on the gas, and before Perez could even get going, he was on him. He's a good wrestler. I mean, I looked at UFC stats just to kind of like, man, I wonder how many takedowns this guy. He's got 25 takedowns so far in his UFC career. But the most impressive thing, of those 25, and you always thought of him as this great grappler and always thought of him as this good wrestler. Of those 25, he's got 14 in the last 2 fights. And he's all more than half his takedowns in his UFC career has been in his last 2 fights, 2 title shots. And of course, I understand you add rounds to it, and I understand that skews it a little bit. But you get the point is like he's always been a good wrestler, but especially specifically lately, he's a guy. He gets you a hip, he cuts angles well, drive through. He does enough on the feet, and he's enough of a danger on the feet that he can set up his entries that way. He's got good body lock takedowns. He's got probably. Let me ask you this: in the history of the sport, who has better back takes? Just back take, like the ability to start a scramble and get to your back better than Pantoja.
Well, I'd throw out someone who actually did it to him. Jussier Formiga, though Formiga was close to his prime and Pantoja was a kid when they fought.
Sure,
but
he had never reached the level that. So there's something at the level, but okay, sure.
Well, Formiga was the best flyweight in the world for about 6 months when the flyweight division barely existed.
Yeah, that's fair.
Pantoja's doing it to much better fighters.
Yeah, I mean it's him. He's at least like we've done this before. Does he get in the club? He gets in the club.
He gets in the club. Like
Sterling, Aljamain Sterling.
Yeah.
I'm sure
Damian Maia.
Verdum, Fabricio Verdum. But the point is, he's in that category.
Yeah.
If someone wants to argue that Pantoja is the best back taker in the history of the sport, and I'm sure people put people in the comment. We're not naming everybody. There's probably 2 or 3 guys like
Michael Chiesa is close. Yeah.
There's probably 2 or 3 other guys who were like, oh yeah, those guys definitely add them. But my point is, Charles Oliveira. Oh, you don't believe it or not? The guy we just fought. I mean, he's old and beat up. He just fought on yesterday. Ronnie Yaya.
Oh yeah.
But the point is, he's incredible. He just gets a little thing, he'll shuck you by. He's on your back. He's backpacking you. The rest of the round. He's gets on top, smother and top game, looks to advanced position on the ground. He's a great grappler, 10 submission wins. He crushed Alex Perez with a neck crank. He got subs. He can get subs everywhere, top, bottoms, in scrambles. He's got a wide variety of subs, arm bars, guillotines, heel hooks. If you take him down, you're not going to hold down. He's going to work. He's going to sweep. He's going to do something. Though he can like toss up too much submission off his back. He showed that he has a car to go 25 minutes. He will slow down a little bit, and he's smart enough. If he comes out really aggressive and he's wrestling early and he's backpacking and he's getting all that lactic acid in his legs by holding on to body triangles and stuff, for he's on your back for 3 minutes as he's pressed against the cage in a body triangle. He'll take time off in rounds, or like he did it against Moreno. He did not so much against Roy, but he did against Moreno. Take like a whole round off to kind of get his cardio back. But I'll say this, and he'll actually rest on top. The comment, he's one of these guys, he looks more tired than he is. Like, he looked tired late against Brener Royale, and he's just a guy that he just doesn't hide it. He breathes hard. But the pace in the pressure, like he'll take moments off, but he's not gassed. Like, he's still cured a 5th round. He beat Brener Royale in the 5th round. He beat Brener Royale he might not have beat Royval in the 5th round. I know he beat Moreno for sure in the 5th round. So, like, he doesn't get enough credit for that. Now we'll move to Ursay. Ursay is big for the weight class. He's well rounded. He's got good boxing, very crisp. His hand speed has really impressed me. Something that I didn't originally, when I first watched film on the regional scene, didn't jump out to me, but he's looked a lot faster in the UFC. He likes to get in the pocket and throw it down. He's got decent pop. Defensively, he's still a little hittable. He does move his head. He throws naked leg kicks, which is open to counter. He's a very good wrestler. I mean, go back to his debut against David Dvorak, which was obviously a very tough opponent in your UFC debut. Took him down 3 times. He's a really good BJJ practitioner. He's got 6 submission wins. His striking looked incredible in his last fight. I like Ursay. He's a really good fighter. I think he could be a serious title contender one day, and I think he could win the title someday. I just don't. It just ain't happening Saturday. I think this is just too massive a step up. I expect Pantoja to do what he does, be crafty, be smart. I expect him to close the distance, get past the range. Urseg would want to like pot shot from the outside. I think he gets past that. I think he does what he does, close the distance, shucks him by, does something to get his backpacks for a majority of the fight. And I think eventually he locks in a submission. Give me Pantoja by 3rd round sub.
Yeah, I like the breakdown there. And I'm glad because I sort of fed you a slightly leading question before getting your take on the fight. And I think you feel a little bit like I do about it, where, yeah, I'm taking Pantoja on Saturday, but I don't think Steve Urseg is done as a top level contender. For one thing, the problem we just talked about, that Pantoja and the kind of quote unquote old guard at 125, they're either moving into their mid 30s, moving up to 135 pounds, like in the case of Davis and Figueiredo. But then you've got Urseg, who's in his late 20s. There's going to be a gap before the Tatsuro Tairas, Muhammad Mokaevs, Josh Vans of the world are really, really ready for prime time.
Sure.
It sounds dismissive to call it this, but I could see Steve Urseg being almost like a placeholder champ who could win this title and hold it for a defense or two in between eras. And even that might be shortchanging him. It's easy to underestimate the guy because he looks like Diet Luke Kumo. Like, he doesn't look like a good athlete.
Yeah, no, he doesn't. He looks like a nerd.
He looks a little nerdy. He's kind of tall and thin and gawky for the weight class.
He looks like Michael Scott.
Yeah. Yeah. Like
when Michael Scott was doing like karate with Dwight.
Yeah. There you go. Like Steve Carell on stilts is Steve Urseg, but he's got faster hands than you would expect. He's a better wrestler than you'd expect.
Faster hands than Michael Scott. Yeah.
Yeah.
It just funny you said that. He's got faster hands. Like, I hope he does.
Yeah. Yes. He has more power than you'd expect. Yeah. I badly underestimated him on his way into the UFC and really only caught up within his last fight going into the Schnell fight. I'm with you here. I think Pantoja, in the kind of fights he's been in and at his age, 34, we may be coming to the end of the Pantoja era, but it's not coming on Saturday. He still seems to be fighting as well as he ever has, if not better. He is so much fun to watch in a division where the top 10, top 15 fighters are so aggressive and exciting on top of being well-rounded and athletic. He's the perfect champ for that division right now. Urseg will probably have his moments, but I'm with you. Pantoja's such a good wrestler and is so aggressive yet suffocating when he's on top, just threatening with ground and pound, threatening with topside submissions. And if anybody gives him just the slightest window, yeah, just vacuum sealed to their back, and the round, if not the fight, is over. As good a grappler as Urseg is, I don't think he has the answer for that either. What round did you call? Say third?
I went third, yeah.
I'm not going to be different just to be different. That's what's kind of felt right to me this whole time as well. Give me Pantoja to retain by 3rd round submission. But again, I expect this to be an exciting fight. I wouldn't be surprised if Urseg finds a way to win one of the first 2 rounds. He really is legit. He's just running into the wrong guy at the wrong time. And that is it. The Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC 301, Pantoja versus Urseg. I've been Ben. He has been Keith. If this is your first time listening to or watching one of our previews, thank you. We hope you enjoyed it. We do our best to bring you as good a blend of in-depth analysis and consumer reviews of America's greatest malls as you will find anywhere in this industry. Please do like, subscribe, drop us a comment. Keith and I both man the comment section. We would love to hear your take on these fights. Both of us picked a good number of upsets here. So if you think we're out of our gourds on any of those, or you spot some upset value that we missed, sound off and let us know. We will give you credit if you're right on the recap. And please do join us for the recap. We will be live on the Sherdog YouTube page right after the main event. Keith takes the captain's chair. We will talk about all 14 of these fights in reverse order, from the headliner all the way down to the opener, talking about what was good, what was bad, what was surprising, what was controversial. There's always something. talking about what's next for some of the notable winners as well as losers, and talking with you. The live chat is open that whole time, so we're taking your questions, your comments, and your hot takes in real time. We have a growing community of friends that hang out with us after the fights, and we would love for you to be part of it. Between now and then, thank you once again for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week, and by all means, enjoy these fights.
Make your bed of fairy tales while you're hunting for